be live on your channel, I
I have a
believe.
question, James. Are you changing out of the maid dress?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Or are you just in it? Are you
Probably,
committed to the bit?
probably take off the ears or something. Yeah.
You can't have the ears. You look so good with the ears.
It completes the outfit.
Does it?
I've honestly never seen someone with cat ears suit cat ears more than you, James.
Have you never seen furries in the wild?
I have, yeah. And they don't suit it as much as you.
Yeah, no, but nowhere near as much as you, James.
Maybe I've found my people. You know?
This is your niche, yeah.
By the way, I'm going to drop some elite ball knowledge right now. The chat might know what it's in reference to. The best dressed guy at the furry convention is always that one dude who pretends to be Jay Schlatt. Do you guys know about this?
No.
There's a guy who goes round to every single furry convention, and he doesn't dress as a furry. He just dresses as Jay Schlatt and takes pictures with people pretending to be Schlatt, and then they tag Schlatt, and he gets really pissed off because he's not been to furry convention. He's like, stop saying this is me. It's very funny.
I mean,
And like that Lewis Hamilton doppelganger that's at Monaco at the minute.
Bro,
around.
I was at Spain when I think it's the same guy.
Yeah.
It was at the Barcelona Grand Prix, and like genuinely everyone was like, is that fucking Lewis Hamilton? Like I walked past him.
does he look that much like
Does he
Lewis
look like
Hamilton?
him?
Like there's a resemblance, but
Yeah.
Okay.
not massively. You could definitely tell it's not Lewis.
Oh, we didn't talk about Kim Kardashian being at Monaco on Lewis Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
Big
Cool.
news.
Cool, I guess.
Is it big news? Like I don't get it.
Oh, the F1's making a big deal out
I was
of
going
it,
to say,
be fair.
every single
F1's
social
making it.
media post is making a big deal about
Everyone's
it.
making a big deal, but like I think most of the fan base just couldn't care less.
Oh, no.
No,
Just
no.
another celebrity at the Monaco Grand Prix, and there's like a million of those. I think to sign off the stream, the chat would like us all to do a little countdown for them.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yep.
3.
What,
Three,
are we Alonsoing at the
two,
end? Oh,
One.
Alonso!
Alonso!
All right, James, enjoy your stream.
Enjoy your stream, James.
Thanks,
Make sure to
boys.
go over to the James channel
Appreciate it.
and support him out. He's going to be watching along to the whole entire race.
Please do.
Dressed as a maid.
Dressed as a maid. I imagine we're live on there now because I have it to auto go live.
All right, well,
Oh,
I'm going to
hi,
piss
hi,
off.
James'
Thanks,
stream.
Hey, James's stream, Dan No Skill Bear anyway. Go subscribe. Bye.
Wow, he's
Oh,
gone.
okay,
He's gone.
We hadn't
See you later,
even
Dan.
finished
Bye,
yet.
Dan.
Alright, Bye, Dan. Right,
See you, balls.
No, I'll leave
Bye.
you to it. Bro. See you later.
Dan, end the stream. End the stream, Dan, on the Crash Happy channel.
I will.
The chaos of the transition. There we go.
Bye, James. Have fun.
Manage, end stream, end.
Let's pop up some predictions. Hello, the non-Crash Happy channel. How are we doing? I'm going to quickly just take some of this off because it is the most uncomfortable thing in the world. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing this, you should be subscribed to Crash Happy. That's all I can say. What is that? Well, again, should join us for the Crash Happy pre-race streams. You'll get all the info that you need on all the things that are happening. I don't know if I've got I have a top. I have a top. There we go. But how are we all doing? How are we all feeling? Oh, actually, I haven't opened the chat. So I cannot see your messages as they come through. But we will be live for Monaco in 28 minutes. Oh no, I forgot to take the ears off. There you go. You can't even tell I'm wearing a maid dress underneath. Oh dear. The things we do for the Crash Happy Patreon. Or just Crash Happy channel, I guess, in general. Let me get your chat up so I can see. Love the collar. Suits are made dressed so well. Not sure if these are compliments or not. Should I take them as compliments? Probably. Are they really compliments? It's difficult to tell with you guys sometimes. Difficult to tell. Oh yeah, I've left the... this is really itchy. It's very itchy, the collar. I assume this is a collar. I couldn't really work out where this was supposed to go, if I'm honest. Because there's other ones. But I assume these are for your legs. And I was wearing them until I realised no one can see my legs. So it's kind of a bit pointless. Shouldn't have changed. I'm still wearing it underneath. So you'll just have to, like, remember. But let me untuck these. Why didn't I include Max in the podium? These are not my predictions. So how these predictions work is I put out a post throughout the week and all of you guys get involved. You throw your predictions at me and then I amalgamate them all together. So I take all of the predictions that everybody has made and then I put them all together, do a little bit of maths and decide what the average person in the chat thinks is going to be the winner, the podium, surprise, positive surprise, the best team, the worst team, and which driver will struggle the most as well. The little ones are for your wrists. No, because there's these for my wrists. But I was wearing the gloves instead. These I think go on your wrist. Unless these go around your leg, but they're very small. A lot of the leg-based things would not go around my legs. Mainly because I think this costume is a women's costume. These are for your wrists, right? I think. Max on pole. I think you missed yesterday. Not quite. In fact, we can, once we've kind of gone through, we can quickly have a little look at the grid as it stands. There we go. This is what qualifying looked like yesterday. We've got Kimi Antonelli starting on pole position. It was a brilliant lap from Kimi Antonelli. Like, so impressed with Kimi Antonelli. Just like how he's taken such a huge step forward in terms of last year to this year, or even just the end of last year. I know the middle of last year was the worst bit, and he kind of got back into form towards the end of last season. But I wasn't predicting this big of a jump into 2026. He looks like a completely different driver inside of that Mercedes car now. I know that the change of regulations also helps with that. And the change of regulations has been good for Kimi Antonelli and seemingly bad for George Russell. But at the same time, the jump that he's made has been absolutely insane. And then you've got on the other side of that, he just looks so confident now too. Like we were talking in the Crash Happy podcast about how, or the difference, I would say, between Antonelli and Russell in terms of their qualifying laps yesterday. And the major thing was just that Kimi was going into every corner like an absolute psychopath. Like he was throwing the car in and was up like 0.2 of a second just through the really sort of tricky corners where you do just have to have full confidence in the car just to send it. And he was absolutely sending it. And then you go to the onboard of George Russell, and it's just the complete opposite. He's nowhere near the barriers. He doesn't want to get close to the walls. He doesn't trust the car to turn in when he wants it to turn in. He doesn't trust the car to actually drive the way that he wants to drive it. So Antonelli just looks in a completely different league to George Russell right now, it has to be said. And yeah, I think we're looking at if the season continues to go this way and George really can't sort of find some confidence inside of that Mercedes car, we're looking at a very one-sided championship battle. Singapore track mark on the wall is turning 61 in the summer break. Is it? I mean, it's wrong because this doesn't exist at the moment because there's no grandstand there. So it is a slightly outdated Singapore track map, but that's part of the charm. It's part of the charm. Lewis could win. Well, let's take a little step back, right? So Antonelli did indeed get pole position. Second place today, we do have Max Verstappen starting on the front row of the grid. Again, maybe not someone that people would have expected to be on the grid, but looking back at not just qualifying yesterday, but also the free practice sessions, the Red Bull car is very, very good on entry to these really slow speed corners. And then you've just got the added factor of Max Verstappen throwing it the same way Kimi Antonelli does, right? And just having absolutely no regard for his safety, the car, what could happen. Like, he just absolutely launches it into corners, does Max Verstappen. And that's the combination that you need in Monaco. You need a car that is really good in slow speed, obviously, but you also need a driver who is just willing to put it, like, and just see what happens, right? And that's why Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli, for me, took the two top spots, because they were the two drivers that were willing to just give it everything on that final run in qualifying. And it goes to show. So Max Verstappen starting in second place. I'd love to know your thoughts, though, in the comments, because it does feel like, particularly going down towards turn one, could just be a little bit of a game of chicken between Antonelli and Verstappen. I think we could see an overtake down in towards turn one from Verstappen, but only if Antonelli is willing to kind of give Max Verstappen that space. I think it could be very interesting to see the battle between those two down towards turn one, because if Antonelli doesn't back out, I don't think Verstappen will. Antonelli has more to lose, but Antonelli has also shown that he is not willing to give up space to anybody. So I think the battle going into turn one between Antonelli and Verstappen is very interesting. And then you also have Hamilton and Leclerc just behind, and we know that the Ferrari is good. Like, the Ferrari has a brilliant launch. Okay, it didn't quite come to the fore last time around in Canada, and I think the teams are catching up in terms of that launch. I don't think it's quite as overpowered as it was in the first two or three races that we had in the season. So I think going down towards turn one, Antonelli versus Verstappen, then you could put a Hamilton in the mix, maybe Leclerc if he gets a really good launch, and it will just be a who is going to back out first? Like, who is going to give up the position? Because they can't go four abreast into the first corner. And it's not a huge run down towards turn one either. It's pretty quick that you go from the front of the grid to the first corner. And then will they be following up the hill? Will somebody go for a move into turn three? Like, I think it could be an interesting start to the race. And Gabriel Bortoleto confirming that he will be probably starting from the pit lane there with Martin Brundle as well. The drivers now getting set up to stand on the grid for the national anthem. So we are only about 15, 20 minutes away from the start of the race. Let me check. We're 18 minutes away from the start of the race. But yeah, I think those front four drivers are very, very interesting indeed. Then we've got Isaac Hadjar in fifth place. I think he'll be maybe a little bit surprised to be in fifth place, considering the Red Bull does look quicker than the McLaren around here. So he's kind of optimized that position to get in front of the Ferraris. I think would have been very impressive from Isaac Hadjar. I think that the pace was clearly there. Max Verstappen knew that. But Hadjar's not quite had the same run with the Red Bull car, has he? And it just doesn't quite yet have that same... I think with the crash in free practice one, especially when he hit the barriers, what was that, through turn 15, and sort of turn 16 didn't come back round for him, so ended up hitting the barriers in free practice one. just maybe doesn't quite have that last little bit of confidence to match Max Verstappen in terms of qualifying pace yet. But I think Hadjar's still doing an excellent job at Red Bull this season, and we'll see what he can do from turn P5. Russell P6, we talked about before, just doesn't seem to have the confidence in that car, doesn't seem to have the confidence in himself as well. George Russell starting from 6th place. What can he do from there? Is it just damage limitations from that point? Is it playing a strategy slightly differently? Like, we haven't seen what tyres the cars are starting on yet. It'd be very interesting to see if George Russell does decide to just do something different, especially because if everybody in front of him's on the medium and maybe he starts on the hard and goes super long, plays for a safety car or plays for a virtual safety car, certainly could be. We've seen a lot of red flags throughout the free practice sessions and obviously yesterday in qualifying. So there's no sort of, there's always that risk when you come to Monaco that there is going to be a safety car, a red flag at some time. Could definitely go for a different strategy, George Russell. But then it sort of plays against you if there isn't that safety car, if there isn't that red flag. And it'd be interesting to see what George Russell and his team decide to do. Do they go a little bit out there and sort of try and go for one of those things happening, roll the dice on the safety car being at the right time, the red flag being at the right time? Or do they just follow everybody else and actually sort of have faith in these 2026 regulations and the fact that we do think there might be a little bit of overtaking, a possibility of some actual changes of position because the cars are a little bit smaller, because the cars are set up very differently to how they were in the previous regulation cycle. But then even if you go back another regulation cycle, it wasn't the craziest of races that we'd see in Monaco in terms of swapping of positions. Then we've got the two McLarens. I think a little bit disappointing, but also can't be too disappointed in the fact that Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri literally said they would likely end up as the 4th fastest team, and they did end up as the 4th fastest team. Felt like they could have maybe got into the mix during the free practice sessions. They were sort of slowly building pace, but when it came down to that final push for those few tenths of a second that really made the difference in qualifying, they just didn't have it in comparison to the Mercedes, the Red Bulls, the Ferraris in front of them. Again, it'd be interesting to see what Piastri and Norris decide to do. Do they decide to sort of follow the suit of George Russell and go for something very different? Maybe try and go for a safety car red flag play? Do I think there'll be a safety car red flag? I think so, yeah. I think you have to say, considering how many red flags and how many different bits and pieces we've seen during free practice, the fact that it is Monaco, last year, I know that sort of last year was sort of the rookie Monaco, if you will. We've only got Arvid Lindblad, who's a rookie, but we've still got a lot of drivers with not a lot of experience racing in Monaco. So I think there will be a red flag. Will there be a red flag or will there be a safety car? I think they'll probably just red flag it, right? It's tricky to get a safety car. Depends where the crash is, but it's tricky to get a safety car around. Like, there's so many really tight corners, especially if it's two cars coming together. That pretty much blocks the entire track. So I think it would just be a straight red flag if something dramatic does happen. Will Piastri and Norris kind of play into that? Have to kind of wait and see. And then you have the Formula 1.5 battle behind. Gasly starting best of the rest in 9th place. Lawson in 10th. So I think when it comes to Gasly and Lawson, that battle, do they just work together almost? You don't try and guarantee themselves 9th and 10th place. If you ask Liam Lawson, does he try and go for 9th place and gain that extra point? Or do they just kind of settle in and go, right, we were best of the rest in qualifying. We're the two that are going to end up in the point scoring places. Let's just lock that in. Like, Gasly and Lawson could easily just set themselves in turn 1 so that there's no chance of either of them losing a position. And then from there, just kind of, again, hoping that the strategy plays in their favor, but also just making a bit of a blockade for the two Williamses behind. I think that's the only thing that Gasly and Lawson have to worry about, is that it is two Williams cars behind. So the Williams could definitely like zig and zag on the strategy, right? You could certainly have Albon do one thing, Sainz do another thing. to try and just play off one another because they're starting side by side. Whereas Gasly's teammate Colapinto all the way down in 15th, Lawson's teammate Lindblad all the way down in 15th, they don't really have that ability to bounce off one another and play that team strategy. I know it won't be quite as big of a factor this time around, but if you remember last year where we had the 2 stops, the Williamses were playing the games, the Racing Bulls were playing games. Like when you did have 2 cars side by side and they were 2 teammates, like the teams could use both of those cars to really go for it. People are confused about the neck piece. Look, you got to watch the Crash Happy podcast if you want to understand why the neck piece is here, why I'm wearing cuffs. Got to go over to Crash Happy. You got to subscribe to Crash Happy and just indulge yourself. There's like 40 podcasts worth of entertainment over there now. You can start at number 1. A lot of them are fairly evergreen, and even the ones that aren't evergreen, they're still interesting. So you've got, at least, I want to say like 80 hours of content over on the Crash Happy channel that you can indulge yourself in, and then you'll understand. Yeah, and Monaco, Monaco's all about the glitz, the glamour, the fashion. This is just very, very fashionable. Very fashionable at this point in the season. Do I think McLaren's favours Lando over Oscar? No, I don't. I don't. Then behind that, we've talked about the 2 Williams cars. Nico Hülkenberg is a sort of an awkward one. I was expecting the Audi to be really good. They were looking solid throughout practice. And actually, even in like Q1, Nico Hülkenberg was inside of the top 10, putting in some competitive lap times. Just didn't quite come together. I know Gabriel Bortoleto had that incident at the end of Q1, hit into the wall. Gabby starting from the pit lane might not even start the race at all, from what he was sort of saying to Martin Brundle on the grid. So we'll see if Gabby does take part in the Monaco Grand Prix. Is it worth it? If you're starting from the pit lane, the possibility of you scoring any points is very, very small. And the Audi just kind of take the hit there, you know what I mean? I know they've got their special livery and they're sort of celebrating various bits and pieces, but at the same time, you got to look at the season overall and you go, is it worth putting 78 laps of Monaco into the power unit, into the gearbox, when you could just, start from the pit lane and maybe retire the car and just sort of take the hit, because you're not going to get points from starting 22nd anyway. Who do I think will win? If not Charles, I mean, definitely not Charles. I think Kimi Antonelli and Max Verstappen starting on the front row. It's very difficult to look past either of them taking home the victory. I'm going to say, obviously, whoever out of Max and Kimi leads out of turn 1 is likely to go on to win, unless there's a red flag safety car that plays into a weird direction. And then it's kind of whoever takes the gamble behind, right? Maybe they end up on the right tire at the right time. We're about to sort of get confirmation of who's starting on what tires. But let's say Antonelli and Verstappen both start on the mediums. And Isaac Hadjar decides to start on the hards. And Hadjar goes really long. Antonelli, Verstappen pit. They drop behind Hadjar in terms of the running order. And then there's a safety car. Or then there's a red flag. Massively plays into Hadjar's favour. Hadjar can then swap tyres under the red flag conditions, or there's various different ways it can play out, right, in terms of strategy. Not going to go through every single possible orientation. But I think this could be an interesting one if somebody decides to do something a bit different in terms of strategy. And it's a big gamble as well, because it could also completely backfire. You start on a slightly different tyre to everybody else, and then the safety car comes out at a slightly different time, or maybe, you go a little bit longer and there isn't a safety car, and then you end up having the slower pace. There's a lot of things that could go into favour. You've got to remember, I know that people complain about Monaco not being a good track for overtaking, and I agree. It's a very bad track for overtaking, but it is quite an interesting track when it comes to strategy. It is a very interesting track when it comes to which tyres are you on and when, how much do you risk, do you factor in a safety car, when do you think that safety car might happen? Because it's very difficult to predict when a safety car might happen, or almost impossible to predict when a safety car might happen. But do you think there will be one? When do you think that might be? Like, it's very tricky to get the strategy spot on in Monaco. Very, very difficult to get the strategy spot on in Monaco. At least it won't rain, it doesn't look like. So not looking like there's going to be that problem. And at least Piastri and Norris won't start on the medium compound tyre, on the intermediate tyre, sorry. They might actually start on a proper slick tyre for a dry race, like they should do. Bortoletto's car broke down at the end of the pit lane. Yeah, so Bortoletto is indeed starting from the pit lane. Well, starting from the pit lane, hopefully. Whether or not he starts at all, we'll kind of get confirmation of. But Kimi Antonelli lining up on the front of the grid there. Could indeed make history. 5 wins in a row it would be for Kimi Antonelli if he manages to win here today. That is just ridiculous, isn't it? There's a lot of drivers, and you look back at Formula One drivers from the past, and you look at even the most dominant drivers, the most dominant eras. 5 wins in a row is a tricky thing to achieve. There are not many drivers that have won 5 races in a row. I know that Max absolutely smashed it, and won like 7 in a row, and then also won that 10 in a row. But that was a very, very once in a lifetime thing I think we saw when Max Verstappen was that dominant for that long. Winning 5 races in a row does not come around very much. Lewis Hamilton did not win 5 in a row that often when he was in like the Mercedes car that was winning championships comfortably over and over again. It is really tough to win 5 in a row. But Kimi Antonelli could do it. Do I reckon Carlos could grab some points? Yeah, maybe. As I said, with the Williams, it'd be interesting to see what they do decide to do, because they are side by side with one another. Like they're the only teammate pair, other than like the Ferraris and McLarens, but I'm not really sort of putting them in the same category as the Williams car. They're the only midfield pair that are starting side by side, so they do have that advantage. And they could play some weird tactical games, right? Like Sainz could hold up the pack and release Albon a little bit and allow Albon to maybe do something a little bit different. Oh, there we go. We've got tyre confirmations coming through. Lots of medium tyres. Okay, nobody deciding to go for something a bit different. I thought we might see someone maybe gamble on a hard compound tyre or a soft. I suppose you got Perez and Bottas who have gone for the soft compound tyre there. But everyone other than Bottas and Perez starting on a fresh set of medium tyres. Interesting. So George Russell is going to be on the same strategy as the guys ahead of him. Piastri, Norris going to be on the same strategy as the guys ahead of them. Maybe they're just thinking it's better to follow the pack and not look like an absolute idiot. Because, like, if you do, it's tough, right? Because I think Piastri said this about McLaren in Canada last time around. If you pick the intermediate tyres and then absolutely hammers it down with rain, Piastri and Norris would have looked like geniuses in Canada. But it's the opposite, right? If it doesn't rain, then you do look like absolute idiots. And I'll hold my hands up. The McLaren team did look like absolute idiots when it came to last weekend, or a couple of weekends ago in Canada. But at the same time, they tried something different to try and win the Grand Prix. If Russell would have started on the hard compound tyre and ended up 10th, we'd have said, it was a terrible choice from Russell to start on the hard compound tyre. If Russell started on the hard compound tyre and ended up first, we'd have said it was absolute genius from George Russell to start on the hard compound tyre. So it's a really difficult choice for the teams to have to make. I do have to say, it is very, very awkward and almost a thankless job to try something different. Because if you try something different and it's good, you get praised as a hero. Try something different and it's bad, you might as well just give up. All right. Lewis is my favorite, but I'd like to see Charles win. Okay. There's sort of one side of me that does want to see Antonelli just continue this win streak and just like the absolute amazement that he is able to go out there and perform week after week after week, and just do it over and over and over again. And the fact that he's been able to win so many races in a row. But then there's also the other side of me that would like really like, as you say, like a Hamilton to get a win for Ferrari would be absolutely amazing. Or maybe even a Hadjar to get their first win in Formula One. I know he's already got a podium after the Netherlands last year, but even a first podium in a Red Bull, right? I know he's got a podium for Racing Bulls, but a podium for Red Bull. I would quite like the other storylines to play out. I think there's a few storylines here that could be really, really fun, really interesting to see. But we are only a couple of minutes out of the start of this Grand Prix. Let me quickly grab my stream so that I can actually see what is going to happen. And let's see what we have got. Double podium for Ferrari. See, that would be a good story too. Like to see Hamilton and Leclerc both up there at the same time would be very nice. But Max Verstappen would be the driver that would miss out there, I'd imagine. And he looks absolutely dead set on trying to get the victory here this weekend. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. A little bit adrift in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Max. Not really a position that he's used to being in when it comes to the driver's standings. Certainly looking at the last few years of Formula One. But now an opportunity to regain a few more points and bank them for the Red Bull team for this season. Of course, we go straight into the Spanish Grand Prix next weekend as well. Or I should say the Barcelona Grand Prix, because it's not the Spanish Grand Prix anymore. Madrid now the Spanish Grand Prix. Gabriel Bortoleto, I think, still in the garage. Haven't seen Gabriel Bortoleto's car at the end of the pit lane yet, as we're about to get going with the formation lap. Kimi Antonelli going to be the first driver to move away at the start of the grid. Oh, and I do need to adjust this a little. Interesting. Let me reset this whilst we are doing the formation lap to see if we can get the track map working. We are on the formation lap. 78 laps of the Monaco Grand Prix ahead of us. Sergio Perez already under investigation? Yes. Practice start infringement, apparently. Why is the track map not track mapping? Interesting. Let me close it and reopen it. Oh, we might not have a track map, which is kind of annoying. Formation lap slowly coming to a close. Kimi Antonelli just making his way around turn 19, followed by Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque driver, his home Grand Prix. Trying his best to win out once again. Antonelli has come to a stop at the front of the grid. Lewis Hamilton slots in behind him in... Oh, here we go. Oh, it's getting very close. Gabriel Bortoleto still not seen any sort of movement from the Audi garage there, which could be a little bit awkward for him. It's been sat there for a little while, but Antonelli waiting for the rest of the pack to fill in at the back. The 2 Aston Martin cars just coming around the final corner now. And slotting into position is Lance Stroll. Here comes the medical car just around the back as well. And here we are, blue lights show to start the cars revving. And we're going to be underway here in Monaco. 5 red lights. Who is going to lead going in towards turn 1? It's lights out. Antonelli. Oh, and it's a really bad start from Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen has stalled and gone all the way to the back of the pack. Releases both Ferrari cars. So the cars in front of Ferraris now. Hamilton and Leclerc move ahead. Hadjar, Russell, Piastri moves. Gasly gets a really good start as well and gets up above Lando Norris. Lawson in 9th place still. Albon up into the point scoring places. It's an absolute disaster from Max Verstappen. Verstappen does get his car going again, but Verstappen now even behind Gabriel Bortoleto, who started from the pit lane. What happened there for Max Verstappen? It all went wrong inside of the Red Bull Racing car. And Antonelli still leads. It's Antonelli down towards turn 10. Hamilton just behind him. Antonelli just trying to build a lead now in front of Lewis Hamilton. Desperate to get that over a second gap to the Ferrari behind. Making sure he's outside of that boost range. And we could see Antonelli just disappear into the distance here because he's absolutely flying, is Kimi Antonelli. 1.6 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton already. Verstappen on the radio. And Verstappen on the radio asking what he should do. And Verstappen being told on the radio, just bring it home, please. So GP and Max Verstappen already not having the best of times. Valtteri Bottas and Ollie Behrman both pull into the pits, as well as Gabriel Bortoleto into the pits as well. Maybe deciding to go for a very early tyre change. It's also a swap of front wing on Ollie Behrman's car, so there was some damage there to the front of the Haas of Ollie Behrman. Overtake mode is now enabled. Max Verstappen has also followed those cars into the pits too. So Bottas comes out of the pits out of those 4 cars ahead, now in 19th place and leading of the cars who have pitted. So Bottas, Bortoleto, Behrman all came in then. Antonelli, though, leading the race overall. And with a 2.5 second gap to Lewis Hamilton behind, the Mercedes car looking in a league of its own out front. Hadjar keeping George Russell at bay. I'm just trying to look who is within overtake range. We've got Charles Leclerc, who's just about got the available boost button. Got Pierre Gasly down in 7th place, who's within touching distance of Piastri. And Verstappen has actually retired from the race. They have decided to pull that Red Bull car in and not put it through any more laps. So that is done and dusted then for Max Verstappen. Ouch. That is not a fun time if you are a Max Verstappen fan, especially considering how good that qualifying lap was from him yesterday. Oh, that is absolutely gutting for Max Verstappen. We'll see if we can get an onboard of what happened there for Max. And just looked like he just stalled the car completely. Just did not move even slightly. Oh. And George Russell has got a false start incident on the tracker there. I'll highlight it for you. Investigation involving car number 63, which is George Russell. Noted false start out of position. That could be a real nail in the coffin. Obviously, George Russell now up into 5th place with Max Verstappen out of the Grand Prix. But George Russell, if he does get a time penalty of some kind, that could be a really awkward thing for George Russell to have to deal with. Has got a little bit of a gap to Piastri behind, 3.4 seconds. So if it's a 5-second penalty for Russell, it's not like absolutely impossible, but a bigger penalty for Russell if he comes and has to deal with that penalty and then maybe slots in behind the 2 McLarens, especially when Kimi Antonelli is setting fastest laps of the Grand Prix. It's not the nicest of sights for George Russell and George Russell fans in this championship battle. Fernando Alonso is into the pits for Aston Martin and back out once again. Alonso does come out of the pits, still ahead of Valtteri Bottas, Gabriel Bortoleto and Behrman trapped behind. So Alonso deciding that maybe the strategy play is to get ahead of that pack who have already pitted. Soft compound tyres, though, for Fernando Alonso. Would be a hell of a stint to do 75 laps on a set of soft compound tyres to the end of the race. But to be fair, the tyre degradation is not insanely high here in Monaco. So it could certainly be the case that Alonso holds on and is able to do so. Antonelli, though, in a league of his own. 5 laps completed. A 4-second gap to Lewis Hamilton behind him in second place. Fastest laps after fastest laps coming his way. He is flying at the front. And those 5 wins in a row look almost destined to happen. Still a long way to go. Still things that could go wrong. But just looks in a league of his own. Yeah, Max Verstappen just could not get away. And it's actually really good reactions from Charles Leclerc to dart across and make sure that he remains ahead of Isaac Hadjar in that. Because obviously Verstappen at a standstill in front of him. Charles Leclerc has to react really quickly, cover off Isaac Hadjar ahead. Yeah, really good move from Charles Leclerc just to make sure that he held onto that podium place ahead of the other Red Bull car. Russell obviously trying to get the run as well. Here's the onboard from Verstappen. Oof. And yeah, it just doesn't get going. That might be the worst start I've seen in a very, very long time. See it from George Russell's perspective. Has to tuck in behind Isaac Hadjar. Yeah, nothing that Russell could do really was behind Isaac Hadjar considerably. And Russell that investigation has closed, so no further investigation on the false start for George Russell. Lando Norris also getting a really slow start in the McLaren car. Tries to cover off Gasly round the outside, but then gets pinned by his teammate. And that allows Gasly the opportunity to run up the hill and get the better of Lando Norris. So Norris down a position because he just got closed the gap by his teammate in front. But that investigation for George Russell closed and no penalty given. So Russell is A-OK with that one. God, the track map today is not having the most fun of times. Sergio Perez now under investigation for the same thing that George Russell was, out of position. Hulkenberg up into 12th place behind Albon now in the point scoring places, of course, inheriting that point scoring place because Verstappen dropping out of the Grand Prix. Now it's interesting to see what the Williams do from that position. Do they try and catch Lawson, or are they going to play a little bit of a team game and try and just hold on to that singular point for Alex Albon? Carlos Sainz actually under pressure from Nico Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg closing that gap to the cars ahead. Unfortunately, I'm trying my best to sort out the track map, but there's not a lot I can do. And there's a lot of things just not working, actually. Almost everything is not working here in Monaco. Hamilton now 4.3 seconds adrift at the top of the running order. Charles Leclerc then 3.5 seconds behind as well. So no real battling to talk of from the top three. Just separating out and making sure that they have got enough space between them. Hadjar then running in 4th place, also 1.8 seconds behind. So nobody within boost range until you get to Lando Norris, who is now fighting Pierre Gasly's rear wing, trying to find anywhere on the track where there might be an opportunity to overtake. Haven't seen any moves made since the start yet. Obviously, changes of position on the first lap are very different to changes of position throughout the rest of the Grand Prix. That special red helmet of Pierre Gasly flashes past, and Lando Norris's car in tow just behind. Maybe up the hill. Can Lando Norris close the gap to Pierre in front? I don't think so. And this is the thing. Gasly's not really giving Lando any kind of space where he could attack. Gasly just closing all of those options off, making sure he hits his apexes. It's going to be very tricky for Lando Norris to do anything coming through. Oh my goodness, they are very close to one another. Lando Norris right under the rear wing of the Alpine. The smoke is increasing on the front brakes from Valtteri Bottas over the radio. That's not what you want to hear. Down towards the chicane they go. Lando Norris does have a little look at Pierre Gasly. Gasly more than enough ahead of Norris to make sure that nothing happens for now. Lando Norris continues on then, trying to catch Pierre Gasly and trying to just find anywhere on the circuit where two cars can actually get side by side. Gabriel Bortoleto doing the same thing with Valtteri Bottas. Bottas's brakes smoking ahead of him, but Bortoletto's still not able to get the move done on the Cadillac car. Ollie Behrman running right at the back of the pack, who are still in this race. Of course, Max Verstappen out of the Grand Prix. 22nd place for him. Just a really poor start from Max Verstappen, and it went from possibility of a win and fighting for the first place down towards turn 1 to back of the pack and out of the race very quickly today for Max Verstappen. Drive-through penalty for Sergio Perez is confirmed. So Russell was not out of position enough to gain a penalty. Sergio Perez most certainly was. Perez given that penalty by the stewards then. And Perez will have a drive-through penalty. Be interesting to see. Well, he's also got a pit. That's just going to put Perez right at the back of the pack, isn't it? It's not going to really help anybody who is involved. Those at the back there. Alonso, Stroll, Bottas, Bortoleto and Behrman all have made a stop so far. Will that play into their favour? We'll have to wait and see. Nico Hülkenberg also slightly given up maybe on the back of Carlos Sainz. Was right under the rear wing of the Williams cars. Now dropped to beyond a second behind him. Norris still trying to close in on the back of Gasly. Here comes Esteban Ocon into the pits for the Haas team. And it's onto the hard compound tyre for Esteban Ocon. Sergio Perez also coming into the pits to get rid of that drive-through penalty for him. Where's Ocon going to come out? Still ahead of Alonso, still ahead of Stroll is Esteban Ocon. So now leading the pack of the drivers who have pitted. But what's the gap to Arvid Lindblad ahead? Still 22-second gap to Lindblad ahead. So keep an eye on that gap between Lindblad and Ocon to see whether or not pitting early will actually play into the favour of any of those cars towards the back end of the pack. Because Ocon, the first car, I was going to say with a little bit of pace to possibly cause any problems in the midfield. But the Haas car hasn't looked incredible, has it? Both of the Haas cars out in Q3. Really, what we want to see is someone like a Lindblad to pit or a Hülkenberg to pit to see what is going to happen with the midfield cars who have already pitted. Perez got a drive-through. He did indeed. Has now served it, though. So it is ticked off, as you can see on the investigations list there as well. Perez, drive-through penalty. Only dropped him back into 18th place, but obviously has to pit again, where everybody else who has pitted once has now completed their pit stop for the race and probably won't pit again. So the likes of Ocon, Alonso, Stroll, Bottas, Bortoleto, Behrman, we will likely not see pit. Oh, and here it was for Sergio. Let's see what happened here. Was he just too far? Just in the wrong pit position, maybe? Is he just a little bit too far to the right, possibly? maybe just out of position inside of that pit box. It's not by a lot, maybe just a little bit too far forward, maybe a little bit too far right. Tricky to see from the onboard there for Sergio Perez, but a penalty given nonetheless, and a penalty dealt with by Cadillac. Down in 18th place now, the Mexican driver. Antonelli now fighting through the traffic at the back of the pack, and actually Antonelli losing a little bit of time as he fights through the traffic. Obviously blue flags being waved, but still very tricky to get through these cars, even when you're not racing them and they are actually actively trying to get out of the way of you. There's not a lot of places they can get out of the way. Hamilton now lapping Ollie Behrman, and Behrman not giving the Ferrari too much of a headache. But it's going to be interesting to see when and how and where a lot of these front runners decide to make their pit stops. As Charles Leclerc now moves past the Haas of Ollie Behrman as well. Blue lights for number 77 ahead of Charles Leclerc also. So Valtteri Bottas hopefully shuffling out of the way very soon. Does indeed. And Charles Leclerc continues on. This could be the other thing, right? The fact that we now have back markers in play, where you catch those back markers, how you catch those back markers. And then George Russell in P5. 1.4 seconds adrift of Hadjar is actually the closest gap inside of the top 5. But George Russell still seemingly not able to do much. Here we go. Hülkenberg is pitting. Very early indeed for some hard compound tyres. So this could be interesting to see. First of all, where Hülkenberg comes out. I imagine it's still going to be ahead of Esteban Ocon. But also what kind of pace Hülkenberg has. Because Lindblad, 1.6 seconds behind Colapinto. Lindblad, 15.8 seconds adrift. Let's see if I can reset anything. I'm trying my best with the track map and bits and pieces, I promise. But if the data is not there from Monaco, I can't really do much about it. Like the Sky Sports broadcast has also cut out a couple of times as well. So I think it is just more of a there isn't the information at the moment type thing, as opposed to it being a multi-viewer problem. George Russell was actually 0.6 of a second quicker than Isaac Hadjar last lap. Ollie Behrman, not very happy at all on the radio. Some choice words from Ollie Behrman on the radio. Hülkenberg, though, has closed the gap to Lindblad a little bit there. Hülkenberg's last lap, a 120.3. Okay. Antonelli now needs to think about when and how does he pit. Where would Antonelli come out? He would come out in and around Oscar Piastri if he did pit right now. Would Kimi Antonelli, possibly just wanting a little bit more of a gap between Russell and Piastri. There is a 7-second gap between the McLaren and the Mercedes that Antonelli could slot himself into. A little bit of clean air still to run into, but the problem is he's got both Ferraris to contend with, and this is the thing that plays into your favour if you've got two teammates side by side. And Lewis Hamilton saying actually the deg on these tyres is a lot higher than he was expecting, and they're getting very hot. So maybe some of those drivers that pitted very, very early might end up with a bit of a problem. Oh, Max Verstappen. Said that the formation lap didn't go very well for Max Verstappen. not quite able to get the car into the position he wanted to, and then from there, engine not quite in the right place. So it was a mechanical fault inside of the Max Verstappen Red Bull car. Even on the formation lap, he was a little bit skeptical of what could happen, and then obviously gets to the front row of the grid, sits and tries to fix as much as he possibly can, but wasn't able to get that car running and rolling in the way that you would hope. Ooh, replay of Alex Albon going straight on down at turn 10. Needs to be careful that he doesn't gain too much of an advantage there, Alex Albon, otherwise gets a penalty for running off the racetrack. He is 4.7 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz, his teammate just behind. Makes you wonder if Albon and Sainz playing a little bit of a tactical game there for Williams, where Sainz just drops a little bit further back, gives Albon a bit of space to run into, almost guarantee that point scoring position for the Williams team, inheriting that 10th place from the fact that Verstappen dropped out. George Russell keeping an eye on Isaac Hadjar's tyres and starting to think about the possibility of gaining on the Red Bull. In fact, has moved to within a second of Isaac Hadjar's Red Bull. George Russell seeing that there's a little bit of graining on Isaac Hadjar's tyres and maybe thinking now is the time to strike. Hadjar on the radio. Just cannot get the tyres to work in the way that he wants to. No rear, no fronts is the call from Isaac Hadjar. He is not very happy inside of that Red Bull car at all at this moment in time. Cannot quite get to grips with it this weekend. Since the map is broken, can we have the radio bigger? Yeah, that's probably not a bad shout, actually. Thank you for the super chat as well. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I'll reset the track map again. I am resetting it like every couple of minutes or so. But I've just got nothing. Whoop. Oops. Like so. I could just, to be fair, just do the whole thing. Oh. We got a reset. Still nothing on the map, though. There you go. Antonelli continuing to lead this Grand Prix. 3 seconds the gap to Hamilton behind, though. It's not completely and utterly done. I'll tell you what is done. Valtteri Bottas, by the looks of things, he's pulled back into the pits of the Cadillac, was complaining about the brakes smoking inside of that Cadillac car, and does now seem to be the end of Valtteri Bottas's race. George Russell on the radio. How much space would you have in the clear air? At least 1 second, I think, says George Russell on the radio, as to how much pace he thinks he would be able to find if given clean air. That could be interesting for George Russell. Let's see where George Russell would come out if he pitted. So at the moment, he's 20 seconds off the lead of the Grand Prix. Add another 20 or so seconds. The problem is he would come out in and around Liam Lawson. He needs a little bit more of a gap to Liam Lawson behind to just guarantee that he would come out in front of the Racing Bull. And then he's got a lot of clean air, actually, because Lawson, 6 second gap between him and Lando Norris in 8th place. So it could be a pretty good strategy from George Russell to get into the pits early and try and jump Isaac Hadjar by doing a fast lap, especially if he could gain a second on Hadjar, because that would put him ahead of the Red Bull car within a lap. Basically, he just needs 1 lap in clean air. And Hadjar still really struggling inside of that. Something wrong, possibly, inside of that Red Bull car for Isaac Hadjar as well. Obviously, he's seen his teammate Max Verstappen have to retire from the Grand Prix with a problem of his own, and now Hadjar actually under pressure from George Russell, and George Russell twice looks at the side of the Red Bull car as they come through the final sector together. George Russell now losing a lot of time being stuck behind Isaac Hadjar. It's just that gap to Lawson behind. Do Mercedes pit now? No, they decide to continue on for another lap. Problem is, Isaac Hadjar versus Liam Lawson's lap times. Lawson's actually in favour at this point in time. Is George Russell going to be able to make a move as they go up the hill? Not this time around. Lando Norris also has closed the gap to Pierre Gasly once again. So the Frenchman now under pressure from the current world champion in the McLaren car behind. When do McLaren decide to make that decision? Lando Norris already 40 seconds off the lead of the Grand Prix. Would come out in front of Esteban Ocon. Hadjar on the radio still really struggling. Has no first gear now, Isaac Hadjar on the radio. And a lot of really tricky corners are going to get even trickier still for Isaac Hadjar. And Hadjar on the radio continually just asking his engineer for some kind of help, but doesn't have a solution for him yet. Needs the team to find something to help him. And George Russell continues on for another lap. So the Mercedes team still not pitting George Russell. And Lawson is now a little further. No, Lawson is closer now. The problem is Hadjar is losing so much time that Lawson's lap times are actually better. And Hadjar on the radio, the engine is not healthy right now. Something is going to explode, says Isaac Hadjar. Struggling with downshifts, can't get into first gear, struggling with power out of the corners. Not really much of the Red Bull car that is going well for Isaac Hadjar at the moment. And this is causing a real headache for George Russell behind. Russell just cannot get past the Red Bull. There still isn't the space anywhere out on track. Oh, and a big lock-up from Isaac Hadjar going into the chicane means that George Russell is right underneath the rear wing of Isaac Hadjar, but still just not able to get past because that chicane closes in, and then you have to go through the swimming pool section, and Russell stays behind. And it just goes to show, even with the new style cars, it just isn't anywhere on the Monaco track where you can actually get two cars side by side with one another, even when there's a big mistake from one of the cars in front. Huge mistake from Isaac Hadjar there. Big puff of smoke coming from the Red Bull. But they enter lap 22 of the Grand Prix. Still Hadjar 4th, Russell 5th. Lando Norris has also dropped to without overtake mode to Pierre Gasly ahead 1.3 seconds. The gap between Gasly and Norris. Nobody inside of the top 10 other than George Russell within a second of the car in front. Actually, nobody on the entire track within a second of the car in front other than George Russell, following a very unhealthy Isaac Hadjar. And Hadjar's lap times are just nowhere close. You look at Hamilton in the 117s, Leclerc in the 116s. Isaac Hadjar, a 119.0 was his last lap. George Russell looks for another opportunity to go past, but once again has to follow the Red Bull through the swimming pool section and is stuck behind him. Currently no fix, says the engineer over the radio to Isaac Hadjar, so he's just going to have to stick with it for another 55 laps of Monaco. Goodness, that is going to be a long afternoon for Isaac Hadjar in 4th place, and a frustrating afternoon for George Russell in 5th as well. George Russell, of course, had a really horrible Grand Prix here last year in Monaco, was stuck behind the Williams of Alex Albon whilst Williams were playing strategic games with one another. Russell ended up qualifying outside of the point scoring places after his engine blew up in the tunnel. at least is inside of the point scoring places this time, Russell, but is seeing his teammate Kimi Antonelli now leading another Grand Prix, 7 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second place, 30 seconds ahead of him. Seeing his teammate win 5 in a row, and the championship battle getting further adrift from George Russell, having to stare at the back of a Red Bull car that is 3 seconds off the pace. It's not a good afternoon if you're a George Russell fan. It's a very awkward time for him. Piastri then 5.5 seconds adrift. Gasly, Norris has closed into the back of Gasly once again. There just doesn't seem to be an opportunity for anybody to really make passes. You look at the top 10 hasn't changed since the start of the Grand Prix. Obviously, we saw Hamilton, Leclerc, Hadjar, Russell, Piastri gain a position. Gasly gain a couple because of Max Verstappen dropping down to 22nd place. Lando Norris actually the only driver inside of the top 10 who is still where he started in 8th position. Lawson up a position to 9th. Albon then inherits that final point scoring place from Max Verstappen. And George Russell still behind Isaac Hadjar as they come through the casino section. Hadjar also struggling with the Red Bull car. The reliability problems got Max Verstappen right at the beginning of the Grand Prix. Couldn't get off the grid. Max Verstappen started in second, dropped to 22nd before he even got to the first corner. And then out of the Grand Prix, the 4-time world champion, already probably making his way back to his flat, I would imagine. Lando Norris closing in on Gasly once again as they go down towards turn 10, but just not the room to make a move. And let's see where Russell would come out if you pitted now. So Russell, 36 seconds adrift of his teammate Kimi Antonelli. That is a pretty terrible sight if you're a George Russell fan at this point. 36 seconds away from Antonelli, but add 22 seconds to that really gets you 59, and Lawson is 58 seconds off the lead. So if Russell were to pit, the problem that he now has is he would likely come out behind Liam Lawson and between Lawson and Albon with a slow stop, possibly even behind Albon. And then George Russell is in a really sticky situation. Here comes George Russell down towards turn 10. Is he going to actually have a go for it? No, just can't. There just isn't the space to be able to do so. He tries to get right underneath Isaac Hadjar's rear wing. Hadjar closes to the right-hand side of the track. And yeah, there's just no movement available for George Russell to get into an attacking position. That was a little bit of a run from George Russell. Was building up to that, but still wasn't enough to get past the injured bull ahead of him. Hadjar continues on in 4th place. George Russell continues on. We'll see if he has another go. I just can't see there being enough space because Isaac Hadjar only shifted the Red Bull across the road a tiny little bit, which he's allowed to do in defense. You know, you're allowed to shift the car once, and just completely closed off George Russell's ability to get anywhere close to alongside the Red Bull. Hamilton's in an interesting position. He's 0.8 of a second slower than Charles Leclerc last lap. Charles Leclerc in the 1:16s alongside Kimi Antonelli. Hamilton lapping in the 1:17s. That gap has dropped to 4 seconds between Hamilton and Leclerc. Does have a 25-second margin to Hadjar behind. So Charles Leclerc is also into a place where he could pit and get out ahead of Isaac Hadjar still. Especially if he can get the run on Hamilton as well. We could see Charles Leclerc get himself up into second place depending on how the pit stops run. Problem is it's Lewis Hamilton ahead of him, and Lewis will probably get the choice of pit stops because he is the leading Ferrari. Charles Leclerc can maybe convince the Ferrari team to let him pit first and get the undercut. George Russell still asking the team when and how he can pit. The lap time has increased a tiny little bit from Isaac Hadjar into the 118s, so 118.8 from him. Still very far off the pace of the front-running cars, but is a little bit better than Liam Lawson's 9th place lap. It's elongating the gap to there as well. That's the slot that really Russell wants to pit into and make sure he's able to get a couple of laps to run at Isaac Hadjar and maybe get the jump in the pit stops. So it's not over yet. Oh, and Hadjar's gone straight over at turn 10. George Russell looking at the inside of the Red Bull. That's in... How does that play? Because obviously Hadjar didn't gain or lose anything and slowed down. Did he gain an advantage by leaving the track? I have to let the stewards have a little look at that because Isaac Hadjar did completely miss turn 11 there. Just went straight on. And Russell saying exactly that over the radio. A lasting advantage. Shouldn't be able to keep that position, says George Russell over the radio. See what the stewards think about that one. Lando Norris still half a second adrift of Pierre Gasly. Not able to do anything there at the moment, though. And Lando Norris is probably also looking at when he can pit and try and get an undercut run at Pierre. Obviously, looking at the cars behind, Hulkenberg has already pitted. So the gap between Hulkenberg and Lindblad, only 0.5 of a second, is the awkward one. Hamilton is being told to pit. Box, box, and Hamilton does come in. So Hamilton is the first driver to come into the pits. Charles Leclerc now released into second place. Hamilton will come out ahead of Isaac Hadjar as long as it's a smooth stop, and it is. So Hamilton looking very solid for a podium place here in Monaco. Gets that pit stop done. Will come out still ahead of Isaac Hadjar by a considerable distance, it has to be said, considering how far Hadjar was adrift of the top three. And let's see what Hamilton can do on a fresh set of hard compound tyres. Here with 50 laps still to complete on those tyres, Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc was getting quicker and quicker, though. And was closing that gap to Lewis Hamilton pretty substantially. And how much of an advantage did Isaac Hadjar gain? Just looking back at that replay of Isaac Hadjar going deep and missing turn 11. How much of an advantage was that really? It's tough to say. And it'd be interesting to see what the stewards decide when it comes to that. Russell will still be just looking at the opportunity to pit and get the undercut anyway. As is Lando Norris on Pierre Gasly. So they're the ones to keep an eye on. Russell getting an undercut on Hadjar. Norris getting an undercut on Gasly. But it's when and how those guys can pit and make sure that they don't come out in any kind of traffic or in any kind of midfield battles, because we do have Nico Hulkenberg has already pitted and has already caught up to the back of Arvid Lindblad. Colapinto's not too far ahead either, a couple of seconds in 12th place. Hulkenberg could be in a really nice spot actually to gain and slot into a point scoring place if the pit stops run in his favour. So Hulkenberg's early pit stop. And Ocon is only 5 seconds adrift of Hulkenberg as well. Keep an eye on that. The midfield pack have a little bit of a weird one. And Ollie Behrman is going to become the third driver to retire from the race as he gets the box retire call. So Behrman now comes in for Haas and joins Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen as the drivers out of this Grand Prix. 30 laps completed for Ollie Behrman, and that's all the Haas has got in it today. Valtteri Bottas retired his Cadillac 14 laps into the Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen retired pretty much instantly from this one. Still no safety cars, still no red flags, no big incidents to say as of yet. All of the retirements have been reliability problems. Looking at Charles Leclerc versus Lewis Hamilton, it's interesting to see the gap between them. Hamilton 18 seconds adrift, And actually a 17.6 from Lewis Hamilton is 0.6 of a second slower than Charles Leclerc. If Charles Leclerc can put in another 3 laps that are 0.6 of a second or half a second quicker, I think Charles Leclerc could actually get the jump on Lewis Hamilton in the pit stop. So we're really keeping an eye on Charles Leclerc's pace compared to Hamilton. Needs to be about half a second quicker than Hamilton per lap over the next couple of laps to Charles Leclerc. Then we've got Isaac Hadjar versus George Russell in 5th place when they pit, and who actually becomes the first driver to pit out of Hadjar and Russell. You would think Russell would want to try and get the undercut, but there's just nowhere for him to pit and come out in a nice bit of clean air. If George Russell pitted now, he'd come out right where Liam Lawson is. And then if he came out behind Liam Lawson, it would just be an absolute nightmare for the Mercedes car. He's already losing a lot of time behind Isaac Hadjar. And Lando Norris is also having a little bit of a problem inside of his McLaren car. Possibly more reliability problems to come, as we're not even halfway through the Grand Prix yet. We've already had 3. And George Russell does get the call. Here we go then. George Russell does get the call to pit. And he does come in. So let's see if he can get the undercut. First of all, we need to think about where Liam Lawson is. So keep an eye on Liam Lawson's time. Needs to come out in front of Lawson. It's a very good stop from George Russell and crew. So should still come out in front of Liam Lawson. Should have a little bit of a gap to Lando Norris ahead and some clean air to run into. Does indeed. It's a good stop from the Mercedes team. It was a little bit of a gamble if they'd have just been even a second slower in that pit stop, or if George Russell had a slightly poor in lap, he would have actually come out behind Liam Lawson there, but a good stop and well-timed from the Mercedes team. Now we get to see George Russell's got a little bit of clean air in front of him, a good gap of 10 seconds to Lando Norris ahead. Will Isaac Hadjar pit to try and cover off George Russell, and how good can George Russell's outlap be to try and keep George Russell at bay? Colapinto actually touches the wall at turn 1. Just a little kiss with the rear left tyre. Still running in 12th place, though, the Argentine. Let's have a little look, seeing where Isaac Hadjar is. And Hadjar does pit. Hadjar does pit to try and cover off George Russell. So this just needs to be an electric lap from George Russell to try and keep Isaac Hadjar at bay. Can George Russell get past Isaac Hadjar in the pit stops? There goes Lando Norris past the pit entry. Isaac Hadjar just making his way out of the pits now. Here comes George Russell then. Is Russell going to be able to do it? Yes! Russell going down towards turn 1. It's going to be very tight, but does indeed have the run and gets the place ahead of Isaac Hadjar. And Russell has had to be very patient there, wait for the pit stop, and has absolutely nailed it there, George Russell, and inherited the place ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Lewis Hamilton is under investigation here for speeding in the pit lane. That is usually an absolute slam dunk penalty, and it is a 5-second time penalty for Lewis Hamilton. Speeding in the pit lane. So that has very much given Charles Leclerc the chance to take second place. Lewis Hamilton is 14 seconds adrift, and Hamilton is now matching Charles Leclerc for lap times. In fact, Charles Leclerc was a second slower than Lewis Hamilton last time around. So Hamilton should still hold on to second place. Unfortunately, those tyres for Charles Leclerc seem to have come to an end. Lando Norris on the radio now, struggling inside of that McLaren car. Has dropped to 2 seconds behind Pierre Gasly, and maybe won't be able to get the jump on Pierre Gasly during the pit stops, because he's now managing a few issues inside of that McLaren, being told to change whereabouts he is positioned and change various different modes inside of that car. Isaac Hadjar has pitted and now finds Liam Lawson behind him. Only a second adrift to the Racing Bulls car. Liam Lawson is one of those drivers that, given the opportunity to go for a move, doesn't ever say no. So maybe we'll see Lawson have a little bit of a lunge on the main Red Bull team. Oh, it does not sound good inside of that McLaren car now. The onboard of Lando Norris being able to make some changes to the engine modes inside of that, but Lando Norris now having a bit of a nightmare. So we've got Norris and Hadjar both nursing cars around at this moment in time. Lando Norris and team trying to find and Hadjar on the radio. The problem is still there. The radio's still looking for a fix, but nothing they can do inside of that car at the moment. And we do know that reliability problems struck Max Verstappen out of this race. Just couldn't get the car going off the line. And Hamilton's 5-second penalty given. Charles Leclerc does now pit. It's just whether or not he comes out within 5 seconds of Lewis Hamilton, because Hamilton's not going to pit again. So if Charles Leclerc can get within 5 seconds of his teammate, he will get a second place to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's tyres 7 laps older than Leclerc. Hamilton does make his way past the pit lane fairly comfortably. Charles Leclerc out of the pits as well. It's actually going to be a considerable gap, bit more than I was expecting between Hamilton and Leclerc, probably 10 seconds or so, 9.6 seconds. There you go, 10.2, 10.6 as Charles Leclerc gets himself up to speed. So Hamilton's got a 5-second penalty. Charles Leclerc needs to gain 6 seconds on his teammate. Just over 6.2 seconds on his teammate. And he will be second place in this Grand Prix. 42 laps for Charles Leclerc to try and do so. Piastri still in 4th place for now. Neither of the McLarens have pitted. Neither has Pierre Gasly in 5th spot. So it does mean George Russell will move into 4th position as it stands. Hadjar then in 8th under pressure from Lawson, but Lawson yet to have pitted. Colapinto now pits from 12th place, so Lindblad and Hulkenberg move up a position. Alex Albon still running. Oh. Now we're looking at George Russell speeding in the pit lane. Coming up as an investigation that I've just seen pop through. George Russell under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. That's usually another slam dunk penalty, as we saw behind with Lewis Hamilton. So George Russell now possibly losing 5 seconds of his race as well. Everybody speeding in the pit lane by the looks of things. Very weird. Like usually they just set the speed limiter to just under the pit lane speed limit. As Kimi Antonelli pits from the lead of this Grand Prix. 33 seconds the gap to Lewis Hamilton. It's nice to actually see the Italian on the broadcast. He's been driving around all by himself, putting in very quick laps on those medium compound tyres. Has a little swap for some hards. It's a very solid stop from the Mercedes team. And is coming out of the pit lane. And it's going to be comfortably still in the lead of this Grand Prix. And 41 laps away from a 5th win in a row. The Italian continues on. Just looks so settled inside of that car. Obviously, it would have been a little bit worried maybe about Max Verstappen at turn 1. Didn't have to deal with that. And George Russell is still under investigation. Interesting they gave that Hamilton penalty almost instantly. Still looking at that George Russell speeding in the pit lane. Pierre Gasly has a little bit of a lock-up, which actually has allowed Lando Norris to close back in. Maybe Lando Norris has sorted that problem. There is the 5-second time penalty for George Russell. So similar to Lewis Hamilton, additional 5 seconds are going to be added on to George Russell's race time at the end. Still a little while to go yet, though. We're not quite halfway through this Monaco Grand Prix. Piastri, Gasly, Norris yet to pit in front of George Russell. So you would imagine George Russell is going to inherit those places back and be in 4th place once again. Lindblad now following Carlos Sainz very closely. Williams have done a little bit of a strategic maneuver here, though, because Albon is 12.8 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz. And what they can do is just back Carlos Sainz up to make sure that there is no opportunity for less so Lindblad, but more Hulkenberg to actually gain that final point scoring place. Hulkenberg pitting very early. Lindblad still needs to pit because started on those medium compound tyres. But Hulkenberg has already pitted. So Hulkenberg is the one to actually be a little bit wary of if you are the Williams team, and particularly Alex Albon. But I think Carlos Sainz, really backing up the pack. Alex Albon a 119.4, Carlos Sainz a 121.2. So Williams playing the game there for that final point scoring place. And that is the real problem that we have in Monaco, unfortunately. If you do ever get two teammates side by side, you can just have one teammate back up the pack while the other teammate disappears into the distance. And we're now just getting that with the Williams team. So there is no chance of anybody else getting those points other than Albon at this point, which is a real shame for the likes of Hulkenberg, who's actually had a really good race. Nico Hulkenberg, I know he didn't qualify very well, but got onto the right tyres, I would say, at the right time. And the strategy was spot on for Audi. If it wasn't Sainz behind Albon, if there was no Carlos Sainz there, then actually we'd be in a position where the strategy from Audi might have inherited them a point scoring place. But it feels like for Hulkenberg, it's going to be 11th place once again for the German driver in the German car. Arvid Lindblad trying his absolute best to get past Carlos Sainz, but just nothing doing. What we could do really to mix things up a touch, if Arvid Lindblad did just smash into Carlos Sainz, that would mix it up a little bit. Yeah, Lindblad, there's just nowhere. There's nowhere to go when it comes to Monaco still. Everywhere on the track. Sainz is literally running 4 seconds off the pace right now. And it's just nothing doing for Lindblad behind. And Hulkenberg underneath the rear wing of Lindblad as well, just being stuck in that Audi car behind. Just nothing doing for either of them. It's a real shame because if there was just one place to overtake, it would actually be interesting at this point. Like the strategy decisions of the teams would actually have some sort of value to them. But at the moment, it just doesn't. Franco Colapinto's also speeding in the pit lane. Has everyone just set their pit limiters wrong this weekend? Franco Colapinto also now speeding in the pit lane. Luckily for Alpine, he is not the Alpine car running inside of the point scoring places. That's Pierre Gasly, who is still ahead of Lando Norris and 8.9 seconds adrift of Oscar Piastri. But Colapinto now also looking at a 5-second slam dunk penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Lindblad once again has a look at the back of Carlos Sainz. Nothing doing. It is insane. Carlos Sainz is 123.0 from Carlos Sainz. He is going so slowly in 11th place. Look at Albon. Albon a 119.7. Sainz a 123 last time around. It's a little bit quicker from Sainz this time around, a 121.8. But my goodness me, they are really playing the team game down at Williams and just killing the midfield battle for points. What was Hamilton's penalty? Speeding in the pit lane. Same for George Russell. Same for Franco Colapinto. Everybody is just speeding in the pit lane. And unfortunately, it is all over and done with. Lando Norris on the radio. Want to do the holding strategy on Russell. So that means Lando Norris is going to be holding up George Russell, possibly. So maybe Lando Norris is going to try and hold up George Russell and possibly allow Oscar Piastri to pit and actually get in front of George Russell. Obviously, Russell with a 5-second penalty as well. Franco Colapinto now with a 5-second penalty too. So this could be bad news for George Russell, actually. Because George Russell now stuck behind Lando Norris. Norris is 12 seconds adrift of Piastri. And George Russell has confirmed on the radio that Norris is now backing him up. And that's clear to see because Norris, who has been running within a second of Pierre Gasly for almost the entire race, other than the couple of laps where he had an engine problem, is now 4 seconds adrift of Pierre Gasly. You look at the pace now. Gasly a 118.6, Norris a 120.1. Like, Lando Norris is not a second and a half slower than an Alpine ahead of him. But George Russell is just going to be backed up and backed up and backed up. And Lando Norris being told back to normal pace now, please. So that couple of seconds maybe just opened up the position for Oscar Piastri. Piastri hasn't yet pitted. Looking at where Piastri is, it's 9 seconds to Gasly, then another 4 to Norris, so a 13-second gap to his teammate, and therefore a 13-second gap to George Russell. George Russell actually has a little look at Lando Norris down into turn 10, almost gets an overtake done, but Lando Norris just closes the door as they go through the chicane. And Lando Norris, of course, the reigning world champion. So George Russell again has just found himself stuck in no man's land. George Russell's got to hate Monaco. He spent last year the entire race being played by Alex Albon in a Williams, and now he's been stuck behind Isaac Hadjar, who had an engine problem, and now is stuck behind Lando Norris, who is deliberately backing him up to gain position for Piastri. Goodness me, it is not a fun time if you are George Russell and you are racing in Monaco. It's an absolute nightmare for the Mercedes man. But George Russell, nothing you can do about it. He's gone for moves a couple of times as George Russell and has had nothing doing both times he's gone for them. So Alex Albon now pits. Carlos Sainz has backed up the rest of the midfield pack enough. And George Russell has made a move on Lando Norris. Lando Norris possibly with a problem. I think Lando Norris has got a problem. Because Lando Norris going really slowly through the tunnel. George Russell has gone past Lando Norris now. And there goes Arvid Lindblad as well. Sorry, Liam Lawson as I know, Isaac Hadjar, sorry. Lawson is then behind. I think Lando Norris has got an engine problem and Norris is likely to retire from this race. Box and retire is indeed. Lando Norris joins the pile of cars in the pit lane. Behrman, Bottas and Verstappen now inherit Lando Norris. And Lando Norris is going to pit and retire from this Grand Prix. So now we have both of the Williams cars inside of the points, except Sainz did all of that backing up. Lindblad is now going to be able to pit and maybe get a run. Hülkenberg hasn't pitted yet either. So Hülkenberg might actually inherit that final point scoring position. I know it's a negative because Lando Norris has dropped out of the race, but I'm actually quite happy for Nico Hülkenberg because they did the right offset strategy at Audi and been a little bit punished for it, but now at least get the opportunity to possibly pick up a point. Lando Norris into the pits, out of the car, and is out of the race. So Lando Norris is going to fall all the way down to 19th place on the tracker. And Albon is being told to swap position with Sainz, I think. Ah, I see. So they backed up the pack enough to allow Carlos Sainz. And now Williams looking at a double point scoring position. Gasly now pits because he isn't under pressure from Lando Norris anymore. So Gasly is going to be able to get the run and pit and come back out. Going to be still behind Isaac Hadjar, but ahead of the midfield pack and sort of sitting best of the rest at the moment. And then Albon on the radio asking why we're doing this. Obviously doesn't know that Lando Norris has actually dropped out of the race and therefore doesn't realise that both of the Williams cars are now running inside of the point scoring places. Alex Albon has let Carlos Sainz's teammate past. It was a risky manoeuvre. Had to block off Lindblad and Hulkenberg. We've now got Ocon and Colapinto in a big train behind the two Williams cars. But now Alex Albon has got to try and fight off the rest of the pack. And a double point scoring position, to be fair, is there for Williams. And this is what I said. When you have two teammates that are side by side, now inside of the point scoring positions, it's just impossible for the rest of the midfield to do anything at this point because Alex Albon's going to be able to just basically stop the car through some of these corners, slow down everyone behind him, just make it really, really difficult for anybody else. And there's a replay of nothing coming through the battery, so there was just no battery at all for Lando Norris. Does indeed go slow. Oh! And Alex Albon, I think, has gone straight on there at the chicane, so Alex Albon actually makes a mistake, but then keeps the position ahead of Arvid Lindblad for now. It's opened up the door for Nico Hulkenberg to have a little look at the back of the Racing Bulls car. Isn't able to do anything at the moment. But that's interesting. So there was a mistake there from Alex Albon, who now has a 5-second gap to his teammate ahead. Williams really playing the team game here. Basically, for Monaco to be interesting for the midfield, we need no teammates to qualify side by side. And I don't know how we can manufacture that for qualifying next season. But we just need to make sure that no teammates are anywhere close to one another. But there we are. Lewis Hamilton does have a 5-second penalty, and Charles Leclerc is 7 seconds adrift, by the way. Isaac Hadjar has also closed in to within 5 seconds of George Russell. And Albon on the radio, just really complaining on the radio, saying, look, you're risking my race here. I understand that it's a possible point scoring place for Carlos Sainz, but Albon really not happy inside of that Williams car. Knows that he's going to have to basically be 4 seconds off the pace for a good while longer. He's only 9 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz now, under pressure from 4 cars behind. And he'll be looking in his wing mirror as Alex Albon and under pressure constantly. And actually now makes a mistake around turn 19 and has opened the door. And Williams are going to be punished as Arvid Lindblad moves ahead of Alex Albon. It was a big mistake from the Williams driver. And Arvid Lindblad has been able to get an actual overtake done. That is why you don't risk it. And now Arvid Lindblad is ahead of Alex Albon. Does still have to pit Arvid Lindblad in this race, unfortunately. But now could be in the mix with Carlos Sainz. And Albon, this is just what Albon was talking about. But Lindblad gets an actual overtake done. Unfortunately, I think because Arvid Lindblad hasn't pitted yet, it won't really change anything. Because Sainz and Lindblad both need to pit anyway. And the key now is, though, Alex Albon obviously needs to pit. Alex Albon needs to have enough of a gap to Sainz so that Sainz comes out ahead of Albon, but Lindblad comes out behind Albon. Ooh, it's now become a real weird one for Williams to try and deal with. Do they just give Nico Hülkenberg that final point scoring place? Is this 1 point really worth all of these like absolutely chaotic maneuvers that Williams are now going to have to do? Antonelli being told over the radio that if we were to have a safety car, we would stop again and have more than enough margin to Lewis Hamilton behind. And Antonelli just wondering why, and then being told, you've got a 3 stops worth of time. You are 21 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli. And Bono explaining that to Kimi, and Kimi probably smiling quite a lot inside of that helmet at the moment. A very, very nice afternoon for Kimi Antonelli at this point. And we're looking at Arvid Lindblad has escaped away from Alex Albon a little bit. The gap between Sainz and Albon is the one to keep a little bit of an eye on. So Sainz is 11 seconds ahead of Lindblad, plus another 2. So 13 seconds ahead of Alex Albon. Not quite a pit stop yet for the Williams car. And Albon just needs to be careful that he doesn't make another little mistake here, because letting Lindblad fly is not the worst of things to happen, because Lindblad does still need to pit. Letting Hülkenberg by would be an absolute disaster for the Williams team, and they really would have absolutely destroyed Alex Albon's race. Incident involving Pierre Gasly now speeding in the pit lane. Gasly might end up with a 5-second penalty. He's running in 7th place at the moment. Does have a good 16-second gap to Liam Lawson in the best of the rest positions. But a 5-second penalty likely come in the way of Pierre Gasly, because speeding in the pit lane, there's not really anything you can do to say that you didn't. If you were over the speed limit, you were over the speed limit. And actually, Lewis Hamilton, looking at that 5-second penalty, Charles Leclerc would now inherit 2nd place. So Charles Leclerc is within 5 seconds of his teammate Lewis Hamilton ahead. 4.6 seconds the gap between the 2 Ferrari cars. Lewis Hamilton needs to step on the gas, or it is going to be a 2nd place finish for Charles Leclerc as it stands. Still 26 laps left to go here in Monaco. And Nico Hülkenberg possibly with a problem? Oh no, sorry, that's Kimi Antonelli going past. I was like, who is overtaking Nico Hülkenberg there? But it is the race leader, Kimi Antonelli, who is just who is passing the back markers once again. And there is the slam dunk 5-second penalty for Pierre Gasly. 5-second time penalty given. I'll tell you what's bad news for George Russell in all of this. He is about to also get overtaken by his teammate under blue flag conditions and is lapped by Kimi Antonelli fairly soon. It's been an absolute horror of an afternoon for George Russell, really, hasn't it? Not very fun at all. At least Hadjar is 7.5 seconds behind. So at the moment, that 5-second penalty for George Russell does mean he would just about still finish ahead of Isaac Hadjar after all that chaos of trying to get past Isaac Hadjar in the first place. But so many mistakes in the pit lane, so many speeding in the pit lane. I think that, yeah, there is a little bit of a discussion about possibly the speed pit limiter and the penalties not being given. But the problem is there is enough drivers who haven't sped in the pit lane. Antonelli's pit, Leclerc's pit, Hadjar's pit, Piastri's pit. Like, they've all not sped in the pit lane. So you can't really not give the penalties, because otherwise those drivers who did drop to the pit lane speed limit, are you going to give them an advantage of some kind? Are you going to sort of pay them? The speed limit is the speed limit. I don't think they can annul these penalties. I'd be really surprised, and I don't think they should annul the penalties for speeding. Stroll is now being given a penalty for track limits by the looks of things as well. Lance Stroll being investigated for track limits infringements. Could be another penalty for him. Although he's running down in 16th place. Only 2 cars running behind him after Norris, Behrman, Bottas and Verstappen all out of this Grand Prix. Here comes Carlos Sainz then into the pits. Does have a 20-second gap to Alex Albon, his teammate behind. Alex Albon keeping Nico Hülkenberg at bay. Albon's still really unhappy over the radio, by the way, and Lance Stroll does indeed get that 5-second time penalty. Out comes Carlos Sainz. Alex Albon's going to have to be very careful through turn 1 as his teammate comes out just ahead of him. And Williams, pretty perfect from them, actually. Although Alex Albon did lose the position to Lindblad, they are going to gain that position back once again because Lindblad has yet to pit. And Sainz and Albon are now running side by side inside of the point scoring places. Hülkenberg will get that place, though, because there is not a big enough gap between Lindblad and Hülkenberg for Lindblad to pit and get out and be safe. So it is going to be Sainz, Albon, Hülkenberg. Oh, no, sorry. It won't be. Hülkenberg's in 12th place. I thought he was in 11th. So Hülkenberg is just going to be 11th place again. Oh, Nico. George Russell. Just watching him. Crossing the line at the pit exit. What happened there? Oh. Might have a second time penalty coming his way, George Russell. He does get onto the line. Does he cross the white line? That's going to be very awkward. And the stewards are going to have a look at that. Oh, Piastri's now got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. They are all over the place with these penalties at the moment, aren't they? Goodness me. Maybe there is a problem inside of the pit lane. But again, I just think there's so many drivers that haven't sped in the pit lane. If you're giving the penalty for the drivers who, if you're going to rescind these penalties and take the penalties away, oh, it's such an awkward one for the stewards to have to deal with. Oh, there's something weird with the engine up the hill. Oh, no. Is this going to be a Kimi Antonelli problem with the engine? We've already seen Norris, Behrman, Bottas and Verstappen all retire with reliability issues. I mean, Kimi Antonelli still looks quick. He's just at a 15.3. His best lap previous of 14.9. He's not, absolutely miles off the pace, is Kimi Antonelli. Still got 22 laps left. Could probably just nurse the car home, to be honest. And make sure he doesn't lose 26 seconds to Lewis Hamilton behind. Small D-rate up the hill. Nothing to worry about. There you go. Kimi Antonelli can breathe a sigh of relief and looks all fine still. So Antonelli leading this race. A little problem, but all sorted for him at Mercedes already. No further investigation. Russell crossing the start-finish line. They got the microscopes out and has not crossed that line, so Russell will not get a penalty for that. Tell you though, Hamilton, Russell, Piastri, Gasly, all with 5-second penalties. Antonelli on the radio. Fastest lap, we don't need them. So Bono just reining in Kimi Antonelli at this point in the Grand Prix. Sort of saying to Kimi, look, we appreciate you've put in a 1:15.3, but that is a second quicker than everybody else. So if you don't need to be a second quicker than everyone per lap. You're already 30 seconds in the lead. Let's just calm it down. I think that's the right thing to do from Bono, and that's the experience that you get with someone like Bono on Kimi's side of the garage, and why he's such a great engineer for Kimi to have this early in his career. Because he can just give Kimi that instruction and Kimi will trust him, right? Kimi will be like, you know what? You've been there, done it. You've won so many world championships with Lewis Hamilton before, with Mercedes before. Kimi will just go, you know what? I'll rein it in. Actually, I'll keep an eye on Kimi's lap times because actually just put in another 1:15.1. It'd be interesting to see if he drops into sort of the slower 1:15s. Maybe a 1:15.8, Kimi. Just, hold off. You don't need to be putting in fastest lap after fastest lap. Certainly not in the 1:14s as he was a few laps ago. Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz still side by side. Still no pit for Arvid Lindblad. Feel a bit sorry for the rookie, really. He's had to nurse those tyres pretty dramatically, still on the same set of mediums that he started the Grand Prix on. So 55 laps completed on those medium tyres. There is the swap for the Williams drivers as Alex Albon re-inherits his place ahead of Carlos Sainz. And they are now fighting for position, you would say. Nico Hülkenberg behind Carlos Sainz, hoping for a mistake from the Williams driver. And needs something to fall in his favour if he's going to pick up a point. Otherwise, it's going to be another 11th place finish for Nico Hülkenberg. He's becoming a little bit of a specialist in finishing 11th, Nico Hülkenberg. Antonelli, Hamilton, Leclerc are podium places at the moment. Leclerc is within 5 seconds of Lewis Hamilton. Oh, and a little brush with the wall possibly there for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Just needs to keep himself out of the barriers, especially because he is set to inherit. Oh, and actually the metal of the real wheel rim coming into contact with the barriers, and sparks fly off the Ferrari's front left tyre there. Leclerc just needs to calm himself down a touch. Is within 5 seconds of Hamilton. Hamilton's going to get that 5-second penalty. Charles Leclerc's going to jump up into second place. It's all looking pretty rosy if you're the Monegasque man. Of course, just now hoping Antonelli has an engine issue or something, and suddenly he's got another win at his home Grand Prix. Russell with a 5-second penalty is 15 seconds ahead of Isaac Hadjar, should be fine. And then same for Piastri and Gasly. They've got considerable gaps to the drivers behind them. So should be fine even with those 5-second penalties for speeding in the pit lane. Lawson then running in 8th place. Arvid Lindblad, the only driver yet to pit. I mean, I'm not sure really what they're waiting for. Maybe a safety car or something. But even a safety car wouldn't allow Arvid Lindblad to gain any kind of positions. There is a yellow flag for track hazard around turn 19. And Lance Stroll's hit the wall. Lance Stroll is in the barriers and is going to be out of this Grand Prix. So Lance Stroll just at turn 19. Well, just hasn't gone around turn 19. And there is your safety car, ladies and gentlemen. Just a little bit late, unfortunately. Are we going to see anybody decide to stop under these conditions? There goes Kimi Antonelli, our race leader, decides against pitting. And doesn't look like many drivers are deciding to take the opportunity to get some fresh tyres on. I think the problem is it's just too late. It's too late in the Grand Prix to really make any kind of difference to anybody's strategies. The Ferrari crew is coming out for Lewis Hamilton. They're going to box Lewis. And Leclerc is actually backed right up, and Charles Leclerc possibly going to box. Is he? He is. And so is Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri decides to come in and pit then. Is going to have to serve that 5-second penalty, of course. Charles Leclerc is actually pitting too. Ferrari are going to double stack. 5 seconds where they can't touch the car at Ferrari. Charles Leclerc has actually come in. Double stacking down at Ferrari. Nico Hülkenberg actually decided to come in and pit as well from behind the Williams cars. And Charles Leclerc on the radio asks, why are we pitting? It's a semi-good question from Charles Leclerc. It doesn't make too much sense for anybody to pit. I mean, he's still in 3rd place, but fresh tyres. Possibly on the restart. They're thinking we're going to close that gap to Kimi Antonelli. Maybe on the soft compound tyres we can get a little bit of a jump on the Mercedes car. They called Mercedes Kimi Antonelli in too late. Kimi was already past the pit entry by the time they called him in. Will he have enough of a gap to get in and out and still be ahead of the Ferraris? Has he caught the safety car? He has. Kimi has caught the safety car. Is coming into the pits, though. Is he going to stop? Yes. Kimi Antonelli does pit for a fresh set of tyres then. Oh, and it's a slow stop for the rear left. 4.5 second stop should still be all right for Kimi Antonelli. Was a slow stop and will cost George Russell a little bit. Although Isaac Hadjar now coming into the pits too. Ooh, it's a little bit messy all of a sudden at the end of this Grand Prix, isn't it? Lance Stroll's just put a spanner in the works for a few of the drivers out there. Everybody wanting to get some fresh tyres on. Hadjar actually comes out ahead of Russell. Isaac Hadjar ahead of Russell. Oh. George Russell is not going to be happy. George Russell is not going to be happy at all. That is awkward for George Russell. Antonelli with a slow stop. George Russell then stopped behind his teammate. And Russell has actually come out of the pits behind Isaac Hadjar. Lance Stroll smashing into the wall and bringing out the safety car right at the end. And Antonelli... Antonelli just didn't know what to do. He was caught in two minds. He slowed down at the pit entrance. But Bono wasn't quite quick enough to give him the, yep, come in. It's fine, though. He has come in now and is... still leading the race, Kimi Antonelli. It's going to be a little while for all of the cars to sort of concertina up. They're all in a bit of a weird order too. Some cars have been lapped twice, some cars only once. So the safety car could be out for a little while here, even though they have moved Lance Stroll's car out of the way, because the safety car will now be able to use that start-finish straight. Of course, we'll have to wait until some of the cars unlap themselves. So, Kimi Antonelli letting by pretty much the entire grid at this point. And it's going to take a long time for all of this to shuffle back into position. Charles Leclerc on the radio. And Charles Leclerc not very happy at all. Doesn't actually, yeah, because Charles Leclerc would have wanted a run at Kimi Antonelli, right? Because that 5-second penalty for Hamilton is now going to be costly. It was already looking like it was going to cost Hamilton the place to Charles Leclerc, but now Charles Leclerc also doesn't get a run at Kimi Antonelli. So it's a really awkward one for the Ferrari team. And Charles Leclerc clearly didn't want to pit at that point. I'll have to look back at it. I need to see the gaps between Hamilton and Leclerc and where everybody was at. Because obviously Hamilton pitted, and then they brought Charles Leclerc in afterwards. They got Charles Leclerc to back up a little bit so that they could double stack. It's a weird one. And Kimi Antonelli, it was really slow, that back left tyre. That's what cost George Russell the double stack from Mercedes. They weren't expecting that rear left tyre to be such a problem. There goes Isaac Hadjar past. And it was actually a slow stop for George Russell as well. So the double stack really costing Mercedes. I was going to say second driver there. Second today driver, George Russell, really cutting into his lap time. And Russell with a 5-second penalty. Oof. And actually, George Russell, didn't serve his penalty there, right? So has a 5-second penalty. Didn't serve the penalty in the pit stops. So, interesting. Lapped cars may now overtake the safety car. So Kimi Antonelli just letting past everyone. So just all of the cars that he'd lapped. So almost everybody on the grid had been lapped by Kimi Antonelli at that point. He really had been flying into the distance. It was a massive margin that Kimi Antonelli had over the rest of the field. Bono literally telling him to slow down at one point because he was just leading by such a margin. Freshish tyres on everybody's cars. Hadjar staying on the hard compound tyres. Will have George Russell right under his rear wing, you'd imagine. Pierre Gasly also still on the hard compound tyres as well. Soft compound tyres for the majority of the top 10. Lindblad did stop and is in 9th spot. Lindblad played into his margin, although I think, did Lindblad actually stop? I don't think so. So he's still got those medium tyres on as Lindblad. So going to be awkward for Arvid Lindblad in all of this. Maybe Racing Bulls are going to play a little bit of Williams' game though, because now they've got Liam Lawson ahead. Oh, this could be very interesting from Racing Bulls, because Racing Bulls now, if they let Lindblad past Lawson, they then got sort of 10 laps probably by the time all of this shakes out. If Lawson could hold up Albon and Sainz, we could be looking at a double points finish for RB, and Williams, who did all of that shenanigans to try and get both of their cars in the points, could actually end up with Carlos Sainz outside of the points after all. Well, how the tables have turned on Williams, and I'm kind of glad. I really hate when the teams kind of do this. I know that Racing Bulls are literally about to do the same thing that Williams did to Williams, but Williams did it first, and I'm very much an eye for an eye. If Williams did it first and somebody does it to them, they cannot complain. They have to deal with the consequences of their actions. George Russell on the radio. And Russell saying on the radio, did I serve my penalty or not? The problem was you weren't stationary, though. Oof. I think Russell is not very happy at all. And I don't think George Russell did serve you a penalty. I know that you were stopped behind Kimi Antonelli because Kimi Antonelli was a slow pit stop. But you were not stationary for 5 seconds, I don't think. Safety car in this lap. Keep an eye on George Russell. Keep an eye on Lawson and Lindblad. I think they might try and swap the positions of those two Racing Bulls cars in 8th and 9th place. And obviously, keep an eye on Kimi Antonelli at the front. There's a few little games that could be played now that the safety car has come. Isaac Hadjar is in a weird place now, isn't he? He's in 4th spot. He's had a terrible time. Russell behind him still got a penalty. He's inherited 4th position suddenly again. Hadjar's laughing. Hamilton right under the rear wing of Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli backing up the 2 Ferraris behind him. The safety car coming in. Doesn't have to accelerate until he gets to the safety car line, of course, Kimi Antonelli. Safety car's gone. And we're going to be back underway once again. Lewis Hamilton right underneath the rear wing of Antonelli is going to give the Italian a little bit of a hard time going down towards turn 1. Antonelli a little wiggle just to get his tyres up to temperature and is through turn 1. Oh, Charles Leclerc's in the wall! Charles Leclerc's in the wall. He's made a mistake and Charles Leclerc's thrown it all away. Oh, were the tyres too cold? Did he just get it wrong behind the safety car? It is all over for Charles Leclerc. And it's another nightmare in Monaco for Charles Leclerc. Oh, and another safety car for the same thing. It's the same spot. It's the same. Oh my goodness, he just gets it wrong into turn 19. Head in hands for Charles Leclerc. And he is out of that Ferrari car, and it is the worst possible thing that could have happened for Charles. What happened here? We're on the onboard with Charles Leclerc. Maybe just cold tyres, just gets it wrong. Down in towards turn 19, just go straight on. Just go straight on. Oh, no. And Charles Leclerc's brakes just aren't to temperature. The tyres aren't set. He brakes and he turns and nothing happens inside of that Ferrari car. Just goes straight on. And I'll tell you what, Isaac Hadjar is now on the podium. What on earth? Isaac Hadjar has had the most up and down afternoon I've ever seen. He was blindly swearing over the radio at his team, problem after problem inside of that Red Bull car, and he's looking at his first podium for the Red Bull team. Oh my God. Charles Leclerc again in Monaco. Just nothing will ever go right. And Charles Leclerc joins Lance Stroll in the wall of turn 19. The crane is out once again. This safety car won't last as long because obviously we don't have to worry about all of the lapped cars sorting themselves out once again. We can just get racing once more. Oh my goodness. And Antonelli is behind the safety car once again with Lewis Hamilton and Isaac Hadjar in third place behind. George Russell seething inside of the Mercedes car because he knows he should now have a podium place, but they've completely messed it up. Charles Leclerc out of the Ferrari car into the Ferrari garage and goes to the back of it straight away. Doesn't talk to anybody, acknowledge anybody, and just wants, I imagine, a few minutes to vent, and goes to the Ferrari engineers and has a lot of complaints for the Ferrari team, I would imagine. Should have been on the podium in front of his home crowd and is now standing at the back of the Ferrari garage with 10 laps left still at play. Oh, so gutting for Charles Leclerc. Absolutely gutting. Amazing for Isaac Hadjar. Let's look at the flip side of this. Also good for everybody else who was behind. Now looking at Lawson Lindblad, Albon Sainz, maybe even Ocon slotting into a point scoring place, depending on how RB are able to play this. Because Lindblad still on the same medium tyres that he started the race on. Lindblad has not swapped his tyres. He does need to swap those tyres at some point. Safety car is still coming around for another lap though. Oh, my goodness me. Russell and Gasly and Colapinto still with 5-second penalties, by the way. So Oscar Piastri could be looking at a 4th place here if he can stay within 5 seconds of George Russell in 4th spot. It's going to be tricky because Gasly's there in front of him. So Russell needs to get a little wiggle on when the safety car does come back in. This is all over the place, the end of this Monaco Grand Prix. Red flag session stopped. It might be because of the barrier. They might not be able to put the barrier back together again because 2 cars have now slammed into it. So they are going to red flag the race with 68 laps completed. This is George Russell's pit stop. Yeah, he just doesn't serve the penalty. I don't know what George Russell's on about. He just doesn't serve the penalty. I think that the team forget about it. I think the team forget about the 5-second penalty because they've had the double stack and because Kimi Antonelli's stop is so slow. I think they just forget. I honestly think that they just forget about George Russell's penalty because they just don't serve it. They did not serve that penalty for George Russell. Mercedes have had an absolute shambles there with George Russell, it has to be said. That is disgraceful. That is absolutely horrendous from Mercedes. They've forgotten to serve a 5-second penalty. Speeding in the pit lane again, by the way, Pierre Gasly. Could be looking at another 5-second penalty. Goodness me. And it is a red flag. So we are all going to come to a stop. So another 5-second penalty is indeed given to Pierre Gasly. I think there's another penalty coming George Russell's way. I think George Russell's most certainly going to have another penalty for him. Oh my goodness. The problem is they can't now rescind the penalties. They just can't because they've had the safety car which has brought all the pack together and some people have served those 5-second penalties. Like Ferrari and Hamilton did it correctly. They served their 5-second penalty. So they can't get rid of the 5-second penalties. And like a lot of people saying, oh, well, there must be something wrong with the system. Yeah, there might be something wrong with the system. But they can't do anything about it now because Hamilton served his penalty. Russell didn't. Gasly didn't. Oh my God. And a red flag with 10 laps left to race. Antonelli looking down the barrel of a 5th win in a row. Lewis Hamilton looking at the possibility of gaining a win in Monaco in a Ferrari. With Charles Leclerc having DNF'd. Oh my, there's so many storylines that need to be played out. And we've got a red flag. Why did Charles crash? Just looks like a brake problem inside of the Ferrari car. He literally brakes, turns, and the car just doesn't move. Like, literally, the car just stops where it is. Oh, and then hits into the barriers, and Charles Leclerc out of the race. Exactly the same as what happened to Lance Stroll a couple of laps before. Lance Stroll out of the Grand Prix, made a mistake at turn 19, hit the barriers. That's why Lance Stroll is also out. And then we've got Lando Norris out of the Grand Prix with a reliability problem. Same for Behrman and Bottas. And Verstappen, obviously out of the Grand Prix before it even really got going. So strange. What a strange Grand Prix we have had in front of us here in Monaco now. It was looking like it was going to come towards a fairly easy end with maybe a couple of 5-second penalties giving Charles Leclerc a podium place or vice versa. Isaac Hadjar talking to Laurent Marquis. Obviously, those two, a very good relationship. Would have worked together before when Hadjar was at Racing Bulls. Then obviously got the swap up to the main team. Isaac Hadjar joining him at the main team. I do feel like Hadjar got that promotion in part because Laurent Marquis really likes Isaac Hadjar. I think Hadjar deserved it as well alongside that, but I think Hadjar and Marquis is a good combination, not just because they're both French, but I do think they do get on and work well together too. We've now got various members in some jeans just looking at, I think they're the stewards, just having a little look at the surface of the track at turn 19. There's actually lots of debris all over the track. That's why they've also red flagged the race. Charles Leclerc needs to be a little bit careful of what he's saying there because he has got a camera on him and will probably have a few choice words for the Ferrari engineers at this point. He's talking Fred Vasseur there, just giving Charles Leclerc a little bit of leeway maybe to vent at him. But the cars and drivers are all in the pit lane. A lot of the drivers have jumped out of the cars now. Arvid Lindblad also is in an interesting situation. He's in 8th place, but has yet to have pitted. So they'll be talking at Racing Bulls about the possibility of trying to back up the pack with Lawson, possibly. Lawson is going to be considering that and thinking about what he can do to help out the team. It's an interesting one because we saw with Alex Albon, it can go wrong. It can go wrong. You make a mistake, you can still give somebody the opportunity whilst you're trying to force them backwards. Ooh. This is a very, very tasty end with the red flag now coming at us. Let's run you through some of the computations that the drivers and teams will be going through at this point. So obviously, Kimi Antonelli has been by far and away the quickest driver over the course of this Grand Prix, has looked absolutely phenomenal in P1, to the point where Bono was on the radio literally telling him to just slow down because he had a 30-second gap to Lewis Hamilton behind and didn't need to be putting in fastest lap after fastest lap, which he still was. Lewis Hamilton now has the opportunity to win a Monaco Grand Prix with Ferrari. Just needs to try and get the jump on Kimi Antonelli ahead of him. We know that the Ferrari is good off the launch, especially if we do a standing start. Likely a standing start, remember, after a red flag. So Hamilton will get the run at turn 1 on Kimi Antonelli. And if that Ferrari gets the launch right, we could be looking at Lewis Hamilton taking the lead of the Grand Prix. We're looking at Isaac Hadjar getting a podium place for Red Bull in what has possibly been his worst race for Red Bull so far. He has not been happy at all with the car. He has not been happy at all with the setup. He has not been happy at all with anything. The Frenchman inside of that Red Bull, but it's looking like it will be his best finish inside of a Red Bull car by a margin and his first podium for the team. We're looking at George Russell, who didn't do his 5-second penalty correctly. So Russell also looking at another penalty coming his way, possibly an even bigger penalty. And with all the cars now crunched together for the final 10 laps of the Grand Prix, we've got George Russell, who could drop from 4th to pick a position. Because if it's a 10-second penalty, he could drop all the way down to like 9th. If it's a 20-second penalty for George Russell, he could be outside of the point scoring places quite comfortably. Like, he could fall all the way backwards, could George Russell at this point. Pierre Gasly also has a penalty holding over his head, so we could be looking at Oscar Piastri jumping up into 4th place. And then you're looking at Lawson and Lindblad. Lawson could jump up into 5th, maybe 4th, depending on how this all goes. So Lawson could be looking at an absolutely amazing finish for Racing Bulls, especially if there's a crash at the front. Lawson could be looking at a podium out of nowhere with Lindblad just behind. But the problem is they kind of want Lindblad ahead of Lawson because they need Lawson to back up the pack. So if there's chaos at the front here when the red flag restart begins and Lawson is in like a 4th place all of a sudden, they actually need Lindblad to be ahead of Lawson. And Lindblad is going to have to be in a weird position. Oh, it's chaos for Racing Bulls. Then you've got Albon and Sainz, who have kind of done this weird interchange and actually done it fairly well in the end. They looked like they were going to mess it up at one point, but they have now done some interchange where Albon and Sainz are sitting inside of the podium, inside of the point scoring places, and could actually inherit more places depending on what penalties come for Russell and Gasly. It is absolutely mental. Absolutely mental all over the place in terms of the point scoring positions. And then you've got Ocon and Hülkenberg obviously hoping that they can inherit a point scoring place. Hülkenberg's going to feel really hard done by because he was running behind the Williams cars for so long and then ended up pitting at just the wrong time, really, and Ocon getting that place back from Hülkenberg up into 11th. So could be looking at a point-scoring place. We've got Colapinto in 13th, Alonso 14th, Perez running 15th, Bortoleto running at the back of the pack in 16th. And then beyond that, we've now had 6 retirements from this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc hitting the barriers at turn 19 after cold tyres and poor brakes coming off the back of the safety car. We've got Lance Stroll hitting it and causing all of this chaos, by the way. The Grand Prix would probably be over by now had it not been for the safety car that Lance Stroll caused. And then we had Norris, Behrman, Bottas and Verstappen all with reliability problems and all dropping out of the race. I can't call this. I just cannot call it. I have no idea who is going to be where, what could happen. There's a million storylines inside of the top 10 that have already played out in this race, and they could completely change. Because if the race had finished now, we would be saying, or if the race had finished 10 laps ago, we would be saying Isaac Hadjar really let down by the Red Bull team. You know, the pace was there. Maybe he could have done something, but the reliability problems. And now we're looking at Isaac Hadjar, the storyline being first podium for Red Bull. Absolutely brilliant weekend. What a great time he's had, even though he's had a miserable weekend. We're looking at Russell, who had inherited that place from Hadjar, had done really well and been patient, got the jump on Hadjar in the pit stops, but then not dealt with a penalty properly. So now Russell is looking like an absolute moron because he didn't stop for 5 seconds and the team have cost him a huge amount there. Gasly still has a penalty hanging over his head. It's mental. It's absolutely mental. The complexion of this Monaco Grand Prix has changed entirely for these final 10 laps. And I'm loving it. This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. And one of, can we call it a good Monaco race now? I mean, the safety car and the red flag have been big factors in this now being a very exciting end. As I say, Antonelli should have won this race. Antonelli could have won this race 20 minutes ago. Like, he was so quick compared to everybody else, had lapped almost everybody. We've got to remember, Lindblad is still a lap down. Okay. Oh, a safety car infringement is now being noted for Isaac Hadjar. Oh no, it's changed again. Isaac Hadjar might get a penalty for a safety car infringement. Let's have a little look at that. Where is it? Here. Isaac Hadjar under investigation for a safety car infringement. The stories change again. Oh my god. Oh my god. Is this race ever gonna make sense? Oh my god. If we could hit a like on this on the stream, by the way, that would be amazing, because just while we're waiting, I don't know how many likes the stream has got. 512. That is insane. Okay, we need to try and get that to what's our goal for likes today? We have to get Monaco to the top of the likes for the channel so far this season. I think the most likes we've had on a race so far this season is 800. And this Monaco race is more than deserving of the ridiculousness of just being the most liked stream of the year. So we can bump that up on the YouTube channel, I reckon, to maybe more than the 800 that we had on the previous stream. Oh my god. If you're watching on Twitch as well, hit that follow button. I think we're up to like 7 or 8 subscribers on Twitch as well, which is insane. Thank you so much for giving your Twitch subscriptions over there. If you've got a Twitch Prime, you could subscribe for free, and it really does help out the channel massively. Whilst we're here as well, I might as well promote Crash Happy. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a collar and gloves, well, I've also got some cat ears here. And that's all just very difficult to explain at this moment in time. Like, you thought that the Monaco Grand Prix was quite complicated. Me explaining this is even more complicated than that, and we just don't have time for it. So I'm afraid you're going to have to subscribe to Crash Happy and also become a Crash Happy Patreon, of course, whilst we're waiting for this red flag to come to a stop. My goodness. Obviously, under the red flag, everyone gets to change their tyres too. So we're looking at it. Who actually served their stops then? So Hamilton served his 5-second penalty. Piastri served his 5-second penalty. They did it correctly. Oops, I've saved that as a screenshot for some reason. There we are. But no, Russell didn't. Investigation crossing the white line. Yeah, so Russell is under investigation for not serving that time penalty correctly, as he should be, in my opinion. We've got Gasly with another 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And also, I don't think served his first 5-second penalty. So now a double speeding penalty for Gasly, and probably another penalty for not serving that first penalty when he should have. So Gasly and Russell are looking at some heavy penalties coming their way. Lance Stroll had a penalty. Doesn't matter. He's now in the wall. Colapinto has a penalty. Doesn't matter too much. He's outside of the point scoring places. But yeah, Russell and Gasly, although they sit 4th and 5th now, are both looking at penalties. And obviously, there'll be how many seconds between the top 10, do you think, after 10 laps? It really depends what Racing Bulls do. Like, if Lindblad gets the jump and Lawson holds up the rest of the pack, that could really help out Gasly and Russell. But also, I don't know. Do they do that at Racing Bulls? Do they risk it? Because Lawson, if Lawson is given the go-ahead and Russell and Gasly both get big penalties, then Lawson could jump up to 5th, right? But Lindblad would drop out of the points. Let's do the maths on this. So Lawson would jump up to 5th place. So he would go from 8 points to 10 points. No, that can't be right. Let me do the 25, 17, 18, 25, 18, 15, 12, 10. So he jumped from 10. Yeah, he jumped from 6 to 10. Is that what I said? So Lawson would gain 4 points if he jumps up that position. So for Lindblad to get 4 points, for that to be worth it, for them to do the switch, Lindblad needs to gain 4 points to be able to do the switch and it to make like sense. Okay, this is it's really awkward for Racing Bulls. Really, really awkward. Should we look at the championship actually? What does the championship look like now? Maybe we can work it out whether it's worth it for Racing Bulls. To get that. A drive-through penalty for Russell. Drive-through penalty. Failing to serve the time penalty correctly, drive-through penalty. So the drive-through they have to do within 3 laps of this race restarting. And George Russell is probably being told that now, and that's George Russell out of the points. A drive-through penalty is the end for George Russell's race. That is done and dusted for George Russell there. Let's have a little look at the championship. Let me grab the championship board for you. Where can I put it so that we can see everything and all of the permutations? Because it's just absolutely bloody insane, isn't it? So George Russell right now would get 12 points. That's going to go to 0. So George Russell is going to be on 88. Antonelli is going to be on 156. Antonelli is going to be nearly double the points of George Russell right now. What? That is crazy. What would that be? A 68 point gap that we're looking at the top of the championship. Lewis Hamilton is actually going to jump above George Russell in the standings. Hamilton is going to go to second place. He's going to be on 90 points, which is going to be 2 points more than George Russell. So George Russell's going to be 2 points behind Lewis Hamilton in all of this. Charles Leclerc, 75, is still going to be in 4th place. Obviously, Lando Norris out of it. Piastri is going to jump up 2 places. So Piastri is actually going to move ahead of Lando Norris. So Piastri will be in 5th. Gasly is likely going to drop, probably outside of the points as well, because Gasly hasn't served his 2 penalties. So Gasly is going to drop out of the points completely. So we'll drop down well behind Hadjar and Lawson, and be just ahead of Behrman still. Yeah, because Behrman's out of the race. But then Lawson is going to gain more points. Hadjar's going to gain... No, Hadjar's where he is. So Gasly's just going to drop down a couple of places into 10th. He'll drop behind Hadjar and Lawson for sure. Oh, it is... It's 68 points. 68 points. The gap between Antonelli and Russell. And Russell saying on the radio, get the tyres ready to swap. They just don't serve the penalty. And the guy touches the car straight away. You can't touch the car for 5 seconds. He had a 5-second penalty, and literally as soon as he comes to a stop, the guy on the right-hand side just literally grabs the halo. Doesn't serve the penalty in any sense. Ah, dear, dear, dear. Goodness me. George is going to be out of the points. George is going to be out of the points. The red flag restart is going to be chaos. Oh my God, we're nearly at 800 likes. We are 11 likes away. Come on, lads. Come on. There's like 1,000 people watching. We could probably get 1,000 likes if we really went for it. It's completely free. You can just like stuff. It changes nothing in your life, but it really helps me. Gasly P4? No, Gasly's got a penalty. Gasly will probably drop outside of the points. Gasly's got a penalty that he didn't serve and an additional penalty. Gasly's got 2 penalties he hasn't served. Goodness me. Bad for Gasly and Russell. Oh, we are over the 800 likes. I think this is now the most liked stream that we've had so far this season. I don't know what the most liked stream we've ever had is. I know it's over 1,000, but I'm not sure how much over 1,000. So we could certainly be looking at that. George Russell having a little chat. Oh, he's had a chat with the FIA people, has George Russell at the front here. So he's maybe having a little chat to the stewards. Look, George, I appreciate you've gone to the front of the grid and you're having a chat with the stewards. Look, you just didn't serve the penalty, mate. You just did not serve the penalty. You cannot talk yourself out of that. Hadjar's still under investigation, by the way, for a safety car infringement. Don't know what that could be. So Hadjar could also, by the way, just get a drive-through. And then we've got Piastri on the podium. Wow. Hadjar, 10 car lengths, they're saying. Way more than 10 car lengths. So that was the safety car infringement for Isaac Hadjar. You can't drop behind the car in front of you by more than 10 car lengths. And he does look quite a distance away from, well, what was Charles Leclerc at that moment. Charles Leclerc, obviously, now out of this race, which is a little bit awkward for the Monegasque man. But there we go. Oh, we are nearly 1,000 likes. 993. Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. We can do it. We can do it. Also, by the way, if you want to help out, if you're wondering why I'm in this maid dress, you can go to Crash Happy. But we're also doing another possible dress-up Grand Prix for Crash Happy. We're doing Bananas for Belgium. So if you go over to Crash Happy and you can subscribe and also give money towards Bananas for Belgium. Charles Leclerc now talking to the media. Let's see what he said. Was it the brakes? What went wrong inside that Ferrari? Just the brakes. Data speaks for itself, says Charles Leclerc. The brakes inside of that Ferrari car just not working when they should do. We could be looking at a Piastri podium, and now all of a sudden we wearing McLaren is looking pretty good. Because we could have a Piastri podium ahead of us. And Hadjar getting a penalty. Oh my god. The end of this Monaco race is madness. Absolute madness. How Mercedes didn't serve that penalty, I will never know. It's just a clear-cut penalty. You just have to stop for 5 seconds. George Russell on the radio trying to get away with it, by the way. George Russell on the radio like, oh, well, I stopped behind Antonelli, technically, and we were in the pit lane. No, you didn't stop for 5 seconds. Literally, the guy grabs the car as soon as you come to a stop. That is not a 5-second stop. Goodness me. Oh, thank you for all the new subscribers, by the way. Whilst we're bumping up the likes, we're also bumping up the subscribers. We are well over 1,000 likes now, which is insane. Thank you guys so much for your support. Oh, actually, whilst we're here, little bit of a weird request, but I have started a TikTok and also a Facebook page. And believe it or not, Facebook have come calling. We're in the big leagues of the metaverse, apparently. Facebook have come calling and asked me to start an official, not applicable Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook, go over there and follow that. But if you're on TikTok, like I imagine most human beings, I've also got a TikTok page that you can follow as well. They would both really help out the channel too. But a bit of a weird one to throw in the mix whilst we're trying to hit like goals. But Charles Leclerc still talking at the moment, and Charles Leclerc just saying on the brakes went, the telemetry will speak for itself, and Charles Leclerc out of his home Grand Prix and likely to lose championship position to his teammate. Hamilton also likely to gain championship position on his old teammate, and Hamilton all of a sudden will be second in the drivers' standings out of nowhere. Let's have a little look. Oh! Hamilton under investigation for a safety car infringement. Oh, how the turns have tabled. Oh my goodness. Let me close the championship for you. It has just popped up. Hamilton under investigation for the safety car infringement. Oh no. Session will restart in 10 minutes. 10 minutes until the 10 minutes until the Grand Prix will restart. Hamilton now under investigation. So if Hamilton gets a drive-through penalty, Hadjar gets a drive-through penalty, Russell already has a drive-through penalty, and Gasly is very, very likely to get a drive-through penalty as well. Oscar Piastri P2, ladies and gentlemen. Piastri P2. P2, baby. See, Lewis Hamilton also dropping. Only allowed 10 car lengths. And it does look like he drops to way more than 10 car lengths behind Kimi Antonelli. Isaac Hadjar also under investigation for exactly the same thing. We haven't seen Isaac Hadjar get a penalty yet for that investigation. But obviously if Hadjar gets one, then Hamilton certainly will as well. But the drivers are getting their race suits back on. Helmets are going on to a couple of drivers as well. 9 minutes still to play. Carlos Sainz is inside of the point scoring places in 10th. I'll tell you what, Carlos, with all these penalties coming through and everything that's happening in front of you, you could be looking at like a 5th. We could be looking at a Williams 4th, 5th, which would be mental. Like, Williams have done some shenanigans in this race, and I was very upset at them earlier. But they could get a 4th place and a 5th place finish out of nowhere. Oh my goodness. Russell on the radio trying to make some excuses and point some fingers at people, but I'm not sure. I mean, the safety car came out pretty swiftly. They'd have seen Charles Leclerc in the wall. Obviously, there was a safety car previous to that with Lance Stroll as well. I think a lot of these infringements happened under the Lance Stroll safety car. The Charles Leclerc safety car did not last very long at all, with Charles Leclerc eventually causing this red flag that we've got. Good, good, good. See, interesting to see who goes for what tyres too. As Kimi Antonelli, our race leader, by the way, who haven't talked about much because he's just had a fairly nice Monaco Grand Prix. He hasn't been pitting random times. He hasn't been speeding in the pit lane either. Lewis Hamilton trying to get back to his Ferrari car and pushing the cameraman out of the way. Early, of course, the launch off that Ferrari car, but has a possible penalty hanging over his head. Lewis Hamilton being investigated at the moment for a possible safety car infringement. Hamilton with the opportunity to maybe win or even drop out of the points. That is where we're at right now. Lewis Hamilton could win this Grand Prix or could drop out of the points all completely, depending on how the final 10 laps go. Is the map working now? No, unfortunately not. I think it's been a problem with the telemetry data, because also the telemetry data has been a little bit iffy here and there. I've had to reset it a couple of times and sort of shuffle it about. I think we had this problem last year in Canada as well, where the data just doesn't come through, and whatever sensors they've got on the track just aren't playing nicely with F1 TV. So seven minutes to go. Oh my goodness. Standing start. Looks like a standing start. Haven't heard anything different. And should be a standing start from a red flag. That is the norm. Drive-through penalty for George Russell's massive as well. 2 5-second penalties for Gasly. Still nothing on that Hamilton investigation. Nothing on the Hadjar investigation, which has been going on a lot longer. When was that? 14:33. So that's been there for a chunk of time now. 14:34, the Hamilton one. Oof. Stand and start then. 5 minutes until we're going to see the cars back out on track. 1,100 likes. That is absolutely insane. Thank you for all of the support on the stream. We will be, covering everything that is still to come here in Monaco with 5 more minutes, or less than now. 3 minutes left until we'll see the cars go back out. They will do a formation lap of sorts. They will go around and take their grid slots. Antonelli will be on pole. They will be in that order, so Antonelli and Hamilton will be on the front row of the grid, but remember there is still a penalty hanging over the head of Hamilton. Hadjar also has a penalty hanging over him. He'll be on the second row of the grid with George Russell, who already has a drive-through penalty. Russell will have to serve that penalty within the first 3 laps. So when it comes to a drive-through penalty, you have 3 laps to serve that penalty. If he doesn't, he's then looking at a really big time penalty, George Russell, and possibly even bigger penalties to come. So will have to serve that drive-through penalty within those first 3 laps. Then you've got Gasly behind, but Gasly has 2 5-second penalties, both for speeding in the pit lane. So 2 5-second penalties for Pierre Gasly that need to be dealt with. We've got Piastri in 6th place. He's fine. He had a 5-second penalty. He's dealt with it. So Piastri is the first driver, bar Antonelli, who doesn't have a penalty, or at least an investigation on them, which is mad. So Piastri, if Hamilton and Hadjar both get penalties, Piastri could be running in 2nd place in a few laps' time. Lawson and Lindblad are then inside the point scoring places for Racing Bulls. Lindblad had done 66 laps on those medium tyres. He'd done the entire race on the same set of medium tyres, Arvid Lindblad. Liam Lawson could be running best of the rest because Gasly has those penalties. So Lawson could be the winner of the midfield this weekend. Both of the Williams cars also inside of the top 10. And again, you look at Hamilton might have a penalty, Hadjar might have a penalty, Russell, Gasly. We could be looking at Albon running 5th and Carlos Sainz running 6th. We could be having 2 Williams inside the top 6 at the end of this Grand Prix if all of those penalties come through and all of the craziness doesn't subside and they just have enough in the tank to keep themselves within touching distance for the final 10 laps. You're looking at Ocon, Hulkenberg. They could be inside of the point scoring places as well. Colapinto, Alonso, Perez, Bortoleto, maybe just that little bit too far away, but never say never, considering we could have another driver just smash into the barriers as we did with Lance Stroll and Charles Leclerc. Unfortunately, Leclerc and Stroll both out after collisions with the barriers at turn 19. Norris, Behrman, Bottas and Verstappen out of the race due to reliability issues inside of their cars. Lando Norris just about managing, half the Grand Prix. Behrman, Bottas, not even that. And Verstappen was out, realistically, before it even started, after coming to a stop on the grid. It's going to be very tight. Piastri on the radio. They're going to take a dim view of people leaving more than 10 car lengths. So Piastri being told on the radio to get a little bit of a move on. They are letting the cars by that are unlapping themselves. So Lindblad, Albon, Sainz, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Alonso, Perez and Bortoleto all now making their way around the Monaco track. The session will restart in just over a minute's time. And we might not have a real idea of where everybody is going to be until the race finishes, because Hamilton's still under investigation. Hadjar is still under investigation. Don't know what they're going to do about Gasly's 2 penalties. How does that roll? It's going to be... Especially if Russell also doesn't serve his stop and go. Oh, no, it's not even stop and go, it's drive through. So Russell's got to serve a penalty as well. If he decides not to, what happens there? Oh, this is tasty. It's a tasty end to the 2026 Monaco Grand Prix. Thank you, everybody who is watching along with us. I do massively appreciate your support on everything in 2026. Those lapped cars have now unlapped themselves. They're making their way back into the pit lane. 15 seconds until the session restarts. We do see both Williams cars just coming to a stop once again. Ocon, Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Alonso, Perez, and finally Bortoleto at the back of the pack. And then the green light at the front of the pit lane for the front runners is now playing, and Kimi Antonelli moves his Mercedes car back out on track. Should have been a comfortable win for Kimi Antonelli, it has to be said. Should have been one of the easiest wins. I mean, he's not had many. He's had 5, if this one comes true. But he's had 4 wins so far. This could have likely been the easiest of the 4/5 so far if Kimi Antonelli wouldn't have had Charles Leclerc and Lance Stroll smash into the barriers. He had a 30-second gap to Lewis Hamilton behind and was looking incredibly likely to go on to win this Grand Prix. Now we'll have Lewis Hamilton for company on the front row of the grid. Hadjar 3rd, Russell 4th, Gasly 5th, Piastri 6th, Lawson 7th, Lindblad 8th, Albon 9th, and Sainz 10th inside of the points scoring places. Hamilton under investigation. Hadjar under investigation. Russell, penalty, drive through. Gasly, 2 5-second penalties. Piastri, nothing. Piastri, lucky. He's all good. He's done it. He had a 5-second penalty. He stopped. He went. He's fine. Oh, this is... Oh, my God. I'm so worried that there's just going to be a huge coming together at turn 1 between Antonelli and Hamilton. Hadjar then could take the lead of this race. Russell's got a penalty. Oh, my God. And Hadjar now. No, Hadjar having more reliability problems. Is he going to get the same thing? Oh, no further action for Lewis Hamilton. No further action for the Lewis Hamilton safety car infringement. So that has gone. That has gone. Lewis Hamilton does not have a penalty and is not under investigation anymore. Safety car coming around. Will we get a standing start? Should be a standing start. Got to be, just for the drama. Come on, stewards. You're racing fans as well. We want to see a standing start. We want to see a launch between Antonelli and Hamilton down to turn 1. Standing start. Standing start. Race control. Yes, 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 yes. Antonelli on the radio. And, Antonelli still saying that there's still a lot of little debris possibly at turn 19 and bits and pieces on the track that just going to have to avoid, unfortunately, Kimi. We are there now. They're not going to red flag it once again. They've given it a sweep, and that's about it. But Hamilton no longer has that investigation. I think Hadjar was a similar incident, but clearly a little bit more complicated because Hadjar was under investigation before Hamilton, but they've given the Hamilton go ahead. Antonelli, though, standing start it is. The safety car comes into the pits. 8 laps then of racing between these cars at the front. Antonelli will start on pole once again. He is... And George Russell being told over the radio he's going to do 2 racing laps and then do a drive-through penalty. So that is going to be George Russell's race all but sealed. It's going to be very unlikely that he has a 22-second gap to Pierre Gasly behind by the time they've done 2 racing laps. Never say never. But George Russell has to do a drive-through penalty. And we've got Bortoletto at the back of the pack. The medical car, of course, taking its place at the back of the grid as well. Bortoletto comes to a stop. Here it is then, ladies and gentlemen. We have 8 laps of the Monaco Grand Prix ahead of us. Should have been an easy win for Kimi Antonelli. He's got to do it all over again. Led from pole position at the start of the race. Can he lead going into turn 1 once again? The lights go out. Kimi Antonelli gets a good launch. The Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton side by side with him. Hadjar is under pressure from Russell. It's a poor start from Isaac Hadjar. And Hadjar drops behind Russell and Gasly. So Russell and Gasly up ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Piastri still 6th. Lawson and Lindblad 7th and 8th. Albon and Sainz have held on to the pole, the point scoring positions. for now, but Antonelli is away from Lewis Hamilton, and it's a brilliant start from the Mercedes man, looking for his 5th win in a row. Lewis Hamilton can't live with him. George Russell trying to back up the pack by the looks of things in 3rd place. Trying to find himself a little bit of space to possibly launch into, but it's side by side going down in towards the very... Oh, and there's a touch! It's a touch between, I think it's Hülkenberg and Carlos Sainz. Hülkenberg tapping the back of Carlos Sainz's Williams car. I think he's continued on. Is there damage to the Williams? Carlos Sainz falls all the way out of the point-scoring places. They were 2 abreast going through, and Carlos Sainz trying to get that car to somewhere safe. Carlos Sainz peeling his Williams off and does indeed move it to the side of the track. Oh my goodness, near turn 8. So Carlos Sainz is now out of this Grand Prix. Oh my God. And Kimi Antonelli does still lead then. Lewis Hamilton 1.4 seconds adrift of George Russell. Of Kimi Antonelli. Russell is in 3rd place, but is only going to get 1 more lap before he needs to come in for his penalty. Gasly has a 10-second penalty hanging over his head, but has a little bit of a gap to Isaac Hadjar. Not 10 seconds worth of gap to Isaac Hadjar, but he's got a few laps left to go, and Hadjar has still got that problem inside of the Red Bull car. Lawson and Lindblad is also an interesting one to keep a little eye on in the Racing Bulls. Hülkenberg, with that tap on Carlos Sainz, has now put himself up into 10th place. But will Hülkenberg get a penalty for colliding with Carlos Sainz? Oh, it is. There's still a few bits and pieces to go through here. Russell's still got to come in, by the way. So Russell, even though he is inside of the podium places, is going to fall all the way backwards. And Hülkenberg, now fighting with Albon, goes down towards the chicane. Hülkenberg trying to gain the place, hasn't left enough space, and Hülkenberg actually gains the position on Albon. Is Albon going to have to give... is Hülkenberg going to have to give that position back? Because he didn't do turn 11 there. Albon is on the radio to the Williams team complaining about it. George Russell box and does indeed pit. So Hülkenberg is being a little bit of a naughty Audi at the moment. Russell comes into the pits. Gasly then released. Hadjar as well. Where's Russell going to come out in all of this? There's a lot of cars now coming down the start-finish straight. George Russell now all the way down and out of the points. Comes out just ahead of Franco Colapinto. And Hadjar, a red flag infringement now for Isaac Hadjar. So Hadjar's under investigation for a red flag infringement. That safety car infringement got given a no further action. Hadjar now with a safety car infringement. George Russell has caught the back of Gabriel Bortoleto. Oh my goodness me. Investigated after the race, that Hadjar infringement. So if Hadjar finishes the race on the podium, he might not hold on to that podium place for too long if he does indeed have an infringement under the red flag conditions. That'll be interesting. We could see Hadjar on the podium and then have to give the trophy over, possibly, to Oscar Piastri. Oh, it's got very, very tight as they went through. And Hülkenberg, it's a little bit of ping pong, really. There's little bits of car going back and forth all over the place as Nico Hülkenberg made his way past Carlos Sainz. Hülkenberg now has given that position back, by the way, to Alex Albon after trying to make the move on the other Williams car. Oh, and that's the touch. It's the front right tyre of Nico Hülkenberg collects the rear left tyre of Carlos Sainz. And Colapinto actually tries to make a move on Sainz as well. And then Sainz gets wiped out by Colapinto too. So Sainz really in the wars there on that restart lap. He gets knocked by Hülkenberg into the barriers and then gets spun around by Franco Colapinto. Sainz deciding that he's had enough at that point and retires from the Grand Prix. Antonelli still leads with 4 laps left of this race. Antonelli, 2.2 seconds ahead of Hamilton. Hamilton has a big gap to Gasly, it does have to be said. Gasly has dropped 11 seconds behind the leader, Lewis Hamilton. Lindblad has played really well into the points here. He's in 7th, but Gasly with a 10-second penalty. So Gasly is... yeah, it's going to drop down a few places now, Pierre Gasly. I know he's running in the podium places for now, but he's 14 seconds off the lead is Gasly, so he's going to drop to 24. He's going to drop just in front of Alex Albon at this moment in time is Pierre Gasly. So it's actually effectively running in 8th place, the Frenchman, because of that 10-second penalty. Hadjar has a penalty looming. Hulkenberg might have a penalty coming his way as well. There's a lot of penalties that still have to play out. And Pierre Gasly probably worrying less about Hadjar behind now. Hadjar actually slowing down quite a bit. Hadjar under pressure from Piastri, and Piastri has to be thinking, there's a podium place there for him. If Piastri can get in front of Hadjar, it will likely turn into a podium for Piastri. Hadjar with problems inside that Red Bull car once again. Looking at the lap times from Hadjar, they are falling away from where they would expect to be. Kimi Antonelli is putting in flying laps. 1:14 dead from Kimi Antonelli last lap. He is flying away from the field once again. It's going to be a comfortable victory, as it really should have been. False start out of position for Sergio Perez once again. Similar to the thing that he was investigated for at the beginning of the Grand Prix. He's also been investigated in this second restart. Antonelli, though, leading still. Hamilton behind. Gasly with a 10-second penalty. As I say, will fall back to behind Arvid Lindblad at this point. So Gasly running effectively 8th. Hadjar is in the podium places, but he's under pressure from Oscar Piastri, and also under investigation is Isaac Hadjar. That will be done after the race finishes. Piastri in 5th. Could move up to 3rd. Lawson and Lindblad looking like they could be looking at a 4th and 5th place finish in the Racing Bulls cars. Albon is in 8th place. Hulkenberg 9th. Not sure why Hulkenberg isn't under investigation for that touch with Carlos Sainz. Felt like that was maybe a little bit, maybe just from the perspective that I've seen, maybe it was a little bit less than I was thinking. But it did seem like he swiped the rear right tire, or the rear left tire, I should say, of Carlos Sainz fairly heavily, but maybe it's just because it was on the first lap, given a little bit more leeway. And Esteban Ocon, all of a sudden, looking like he might score some points for the Haas team as well. Sergio Perez running 11th, just outside of the point scoring places for Cadillac. Alonso's 12th. Bortoletto still running in 13th. George Russell 15th at the moment for the Mercedes team. Only Colapinto running behind George Russell in 15th spot. Sainz, Leclerc, Stroll, Norris, Behrman, Bottas, Verstappen all out of this Grand Prix, as Antonelli has 2 laps left to go. And he's flying, by the way. A 1:13.4 from Antonelli a couple of laps ago, and a 1:13.7 from him last lap. He is miles ahead of the rest as he goes into the final lap of this Grand Prix. Piastri just can't find a gap past Hadjar. Frustrating for him. Hamilton is going to come home in 2nd place for Ferrari. Gasly is going to drop to 8th place. Lawson and Lindblad just really need to keep up the pace to make sure that Gasly does slot behind. Oof. It is a very awkward situation for Pierre Gasly. Not a lot that he can do. He's going to drop down a good few places. Piastri's also trying his absolute best to get past Isaac Hadjar, but isn't going to be able to do so. The McLaren is going to slot in behind Hadjar and have to hope that Hadjar does end up with a penalty for some kind of red flag infringement. But at the front of the pack, for the 5th time in a row, it is the Mercedes with the Italian driver at the wheel. A little spin round turn 19 and a flare that is only worthy of the championship leader. Another win for Kimi Antonelli. A ridiculous drive from the Italian and worthy of a champion. Lewis Hamilton comes home in 2nd place for Ferrari. Another podium for the Scuderia with Lewis Hamilton behind the wheel. Pierre Gasly is going to come across the line in third place. Let's see where those 10 seconds lie, though, as Hadjar moves ahead of him, Piastri moves ahead of him, Lawson moves ahead of him, and Lindblad as well. So Gasly does drop to 7th place. Albon couldn't quite gain the places and time needed to jump in front of Gasly too. Albon does come home in 8th place and get some points on the board for Williams, though. Hulkenberg in 9th, Ocon in 10th, and Sergio Perez, depending on the penalty that is given to Hadjar here, could end up in a point-scoring place. Hadjar, 23 seconds off the lead. Perez, 39. So if Hadjar's given a 20-second penalty, which would be pretty hefty, to be fair, but if Hadjar is given a 20-second penalty, Sergio Perez could pick up Cadillac's first points in Formula One. Have to wait and see what kind of penalty they are given. But that is the stream, ladies and gentlemen. That is the 2026 Monaco Grand Prix. It is Kimi Antonelli who leads the field for the 5th time in a row. It is just getting ridiculous. And he made it look very easy indeed. Lewis Hamilton, the only Ferrari driver to finish after Charles Leclerc hit the wall at turn 19. Hamilton takes home 2nd place, and a distraught Charles Leclerc out of the Grand Prix. Hadjar, also the only remaining Red Bull, sits in 3rd place for now. A penalty applied. A penalty applied for Nico Hulkenberg. Perez is in the points. Oh my God. Perez is in the points. Cadillac pick up their first points in Formula One. A penalty given to Nico Hulkenberg for causing a collision means Sergio Perez finishes in 10th place, and Sergio Perez gets a point for Cadillac. What a time. What a race. Wow. Isaac Hadjar on the radio celebrating that podium with the team. Let's not forget, there is a red flag infringement that is going to be investigated. Well, now, after the race has finished for Isaac Hadjar, I'll be interested to see if they drag Isaac Hadjar off the podium and put Oscar Piastri there in a moment. In fact, let's hold on a little bit. I know we normally go away and disappear after a stream and give you guys the opportunity to watch the podium without me. But Isaac Hadjar might be removed from this podium, depending on the various penalties that are still at play. Because if we go to Isaac Hadjar, he has still got this one here. Incident involving car 6 will be investigated after the session. It is not over yet for Isaac Hadjar, as he gives his congratulations to Kimi Antonelli. Another win for the Mercedes man. A win in Monaco as well, of all places. Wow. 5 Grand Prix in a row. It is championship winning form. It is championship driving from Kimi Antonelli. In fact, should we have a little look at the championship board whilst we wait for that Isaac Hadjar penalty to possibly come through? Kimi Antonelli leads the championship by 66 points to Lewis Hamilton. He is 68 points ahead of George Russell, who drops to 3rd in the standings. Antonelli, 68 points, nearly double George Russell's points from the first 6 races that we've had this year. Just had to do 8 minus 2 and couldn't. 6 races of the season so far. Still a little while to go. 16 races still to come. It's looking very good indeed for Kimi Antonelli. Charles Leclerc, even without scoring points, remains in 4th place. Only Lewis Hamilton moves ahead of Russell and Leclerc. Piastri could have another 3 points coming his way. Never know, but is in 5th place nonetheless on 60 points. Moves ahead of his teammate Lando Norris by a couple of points. Verstappen stays 7th. Isaac Hadjar, with those 15 points, if they remain in his hands, he'll be in 8th place. And where you'd kind of expected to be, let's say, with the top 8 drivers and the top 4 teams finally in the actual top 8 places of the championship standings. Lawson, with those 10 points, jumps to 26. He's on the same points as Pierre Gasly, but with a better finish, so does move ahead of Pierre Gasly. Gasly drops to 10th position. Behrman in 11th still. Colapinto drops to 12th. Lindblad moves up to 13th place after Carlos Sainz drops down. Albon up a couple of places into 15th. Ocon also gets a couple of points on the board. Bortoletto stays on 2 points. Sergio Perez, a point on the board for Cadillac. The first point scored for Cadillac F1. Sergio Perez moves to 18th place in the standings. Hülkenberg, Alonso, Bottas and Stroll then the only drivers yet to score points, with that penalty being given to Hülkenberg and those points snatched away from the Audi team. Mercedes lead the Constructors' Championship, 244 points. Ferrari, 165 in second spot. McLaren then a distant third as well, 118, with Red Bull remaining in fourth. In fact, there's no changes in the constructor standings. I've just realized Alpine stay fifth, Racing Bulls stay sixth, then Haas stay seventh, Williams eighth, Audi ninth, and Cadillac still in 10th place, but with a point on the board. What could be a crucial point for the Cadillac team in Formula One. Isaac Hadjar just being asked. Second podium in Formula One. Not an easy race. It's very true. Is that still being under investigation, by the way, for Isaac Hadjar? We got any news on that one? I don't think so. Maybe it'll be a little while before. I thought they might give the penalty fairly quickly after the race, but we're still waiting on the stewards to make any kind of decision. We'll give them a few more minutes. We'll give them a few more races. Greatest race of the year so far? It might be, you know. I'll obviously put out the race ratings probably in a little while once we understand who's where with all the penalties. So I'll put out the race ratings and get your guys' opinions on everybody's scores for this weekend. But I feel like it's weird, though, because it changed so dramatically at the end there. George Russell was running fairly well. Obviously got the jump on Isaac Hadjar at one point. We're looking at Isaac Hadjar now celebrating a podium with Red Bull. George Russell was ahead of him on merit, got ahead of him in the pit stops, did really well to get ahead of him in the pit stops. And now Russell finished 13th. I really, like, those final 10 laps massively changed the complexion of the Grand Prix. Those two safety cars and the red flag completely changing where they are. Isaac Hadjar alongside Lewis Hamilton on the podium as well, by the way, is a really lovely story. Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar's idol growing up. He gets to race alongside him in this season, and now also might get to share a podium with his childhood hero. That is amazing, the story arc that you've got there for Isaac Hadjar. Ferrari, don't mess up the next race. Look, you can't take this away from them. You can't take this away from them. Hamilton is guaranteed this podium. All of the bits and pieces are done. He did his 5-second penalty, came out still. All good for Lewis Hamilton. He is slotted into second place, has another podium for Ferrari, and just looks revitalized inside of that Ferrari car, you do have to say. Looks a brand new driver once again, does Lewis Hamilton. I think maybe 2022 to 2025, that era of car, the regulation cycle, obviously didn't suit Lewis Hamilton. He was also in a Mercedes car that he just couldn't quite click with. And then in the final year of a Ferrari regulation cycle, where again, just hadn't quite done anything. The car hadn't been built around him. He was getting used to a new team, was never really expected to do anything too amazing inside of that Ferrari in the final year in 2025. And then it's had its ups and downs this year so far. He certainly had good races and bad. But over the last few, Hamilton does just look to be clicking back into gear once again. And Hamilton now looking like a real opportunity. If Ferrari can deliver, let's say Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton are fighting for a championship at the end of this year. He's now the closest competitor to Kimi Antonelli. It's quite a gap, don't get me wrong. It's only on 90 points compared to the 156 of Kimi Antonelli. 66 points is a hell of a gap. But Lewis Hamilton, if the Ferrari car, it is a big if the Ferrari car, and he is back into proper form once again. Could he be the closest competitor? Could he be the one to run Kimi Antonelli for the championship? And goodness gracious me, what about Kimi Antonelli at the front of the grid once again? Still nothing from the stewards on the Isaac Hadjar penalty. Be a bit awkward if they did it now. Hadjar has now done his interview and is making his way towards the podium. Might be one of those ones where he gets the trophy and then the stewards take it off him. But is what it is. I might leave it there because I don't know if we're going to get a decision from the stewards very soon at all, to be honest. Go back to the race board. Boop. Goodness me. Right, I'm going to disappear. Thank you all so much for joining the stream. It really has been an amazing Monaco Grand Prix. Absolutely flew towards the end there. Completely changed the complexion of that Grand Prix entirely. But I'm going to disappear and wait for that steward's decision. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. We will be live once again next week for the, I was going to say Spanish Grand Prix, Barcelona Grand Prix, because it's no longer the Spanish Grand Prix. It's the Barcelona Grand Prix. We'll be live once again. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you don't miss it. May dresses for Monaco, all that good stuff. Bananas for Belgium. If you know, you know. Go over to Crash Happy. Make sure you support that. And I will see you very, very soon. I can't even find the button to end the stream. There we go. Thank you guys. You're amazing. What an incredible race. What an incredible stream. Whew.